Good evening, everyone. I am Amanda Benjamin.
And I'm Paul Carganilla, and we welcome you to our mystifying show in which we explore mysteries of the unknown.
So I've got a little camera issue that I will fix in a minute for Paul. But in this live stream and podcast, we'll tell tales of the paranormal and unsolved, while mixing in a little fun and live music as well.
And in this episode, we will explore the puzzling and cryptic topic of aviation mysteries.
Welcome to the Magical Mystery Hour.
If you're listening to the audio podcast of this episode, we invite you to find this show on our YouTube channel, the Vaudacity Network, where you can view any images or videos we share throughout these stories.
And see our faces as well.
Yes.
And if you're already subscribed to the Vaudacity Network on YouTube, but it's a challenge to find the time to sit down and watch each episode, this live stream will be released as an audio podcast. So be sure to subscribe to the Magical Mystery Hour wherever you consume podcasts.
A big thanks to our sponsors of tonight's episode, Emily Thatcher and Kelsey Blaine Gibson.
Emily brings us a quote from Dr. Seuss. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind don't matter, and those who matter don't mind. I love that. Oh, such a perfect quote.
Yes, and Kelsey's sponsor message is, the magical wisdom and discoveries are endless with these two. Find out what you will discover in this episode.
Thank you so much, Emily and Kelsey.
Yes, it has been a solid 2 months since we last were on here talking about the aliens and our alien stories, and I feel like it's been a year.
Oh, I know. It was so funny because I was like, okay, I've got my script done. I've got my pictures loaded. I posted on Facebook. I got my song ready, and it was like 8:15, and I was like, this is amazing. Paul sent the Zoom, was like, okay, we're ready. And I was like, oh, I forgot my little light. I was like, I'll just be a minute. And then we hop on and I'm like, oh, I forgot my background music. I forgot. And I was like, no, it's been too long.
Well, and the one before UFOs, we did nautical mysteries, mysteries of the sea. And in that one, I did a bunch of research on the Bermuda Triangle and found, there's lots of ships that have mysterious things happen to them, but also airships, aerial ships as well.
Sea ships.
Avian ships. And, we after each episode, we discuss what should we do next month. And you said, I'd love to do the airships. Like
yes.
Teased a little bit.
I did because there's so many really good ones, and I actually, when I first thought of this idea, there are actually like 3 stories that I was thinking about, and then settled on one because it's just very much like in my wheelhouse of storytelling. I was like, oh yeah, I should do this one.
It's on everybody's mind right now. I think you mentioned when you said, I want to do this story, Jamie and I, my wife and I, had just finished watching the new Netflix miniseries about it. So I'm excited to hear your spin on it.
Yes, it's like I said, a fascinating story. It's heartbreaking, but it's such a mystery. It's like, how is this real life?
Right.
So I'm excited but nervous to tell my story. And it's funny that documentary came out, and I had previously listened to a couple podcasts about it when this particular event was going on. I was like glued to everything I could find about it. So it's good to finally tell the story.
Well, I can't wait to hear it, but as everyone who regularly listens to the show knows, and how everybody who's just tuning in will learn right now for the first time, on this show we mix live music with our stories, and we try to tie the music in with the themes. And since this episode is about mysteries in the air, flights. A number of songs came to my mind, but this was the first one. And I thought, if Amanda's not doing it, I'm just going to do it. Because as we experienced last time, Amanda and I picked the same song.
Yes.
And of course, it really blew up in America when it was featured in the Michael Bay classic film Armageddon. No, that's not when it blew up. But,
but it was a time.
it was in that film, and that is a true story.
It is.
But this is John Denver with Leaving on a Jet Plane.
All right, let's hear it. So excited.
Oh, my bags are packed, I'm ready to go. I'm standing here outside your door. I hate to wake you up to say goodbye, but the dawn is breaking, it's early morn. The taxi's waiting, he's blowing his horn. Already, I'm so lonesome, I could die. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. There's so many times I've let you down. So many times I've played around. I tell you now that they don't mean a thing. Every place I go, I'll think of you. Every song I sing, I'll sing for you. When I come back, I'll bring your wedding ring. So kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you never let me go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go. Now the time has come to leave you. One more time, let me kiss you. Then close your eyes and I'll be on my way. Dream about the days to come when I won't have to leave alone. About the times I won't have to say. Kiss me and smile for me. Tell me that you'll wait for me. Hold me like you'll never let me go. I'm leaving on a jet plane. Don't know when I'll be back again. Oh, babe, I hate to go.
I love that. That was beautiful.
As made famous by Michael Bay's classic film, Armageddon.
Yes. That's the only reason anybody knows that song at all.
I saw somebody say Elton John in the chat. I don't know what they were referring to, but like I was thinking about like that song and Tiny Dancer and just like
you know which one? Yes.
Scenes in movies when somebody starts singing and then everybody chimes in and the music connects everybody in times of darkness.
Yes. I was thinking there was an Elton John song that I was very close to, and that was not Rocket Man.
Oh,
because I did that one before, but there was another one that I was really strongly considering, but I decided to do something else.
I really wanted to do Intergalactic by the Beach Boys.
What?
Beastie Boys.
It's like, I don't know this song.
Airplanes is when, who did? It's like a rap and then the singer for...
Oh. Would it count if we did just...
Airplanes in the night sky are like shooting stars. That was like really the first one that came to my mind. I was like, could I do that one? And then it's just all... B.O.B. I think is the rapper.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Would it count if we just did anything by... Oh my gosh. No, I'm like, is it... Oh no, I just totally lost the band. Is Jefferson Airship? Wait.
Airplane?
Yeah, I was like, wait, I have an airship in my head now because we said airships.
Talking about airships.
It's airships, right? By Jefferson Airplane. And then I was like, is Jefferson even right? Am I anywhere close anymore? Like, no, my brain just stopped. I'm going to definitely call it Jefferson Airship from now on.
Nicole in the chat says Jefferson Starship is another group, actually.
Yes.
But is it? Is she joking?
I don't know anymore. That's what I'm saying. I totally had it. And I think
Jefferson Airplane and Jefferson Starship are the same. They changed the name at different times.
Okay.
Thank you. The voice of God you hear is our producer Craig Jackman. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Craig. I was about to go crazy.
That'd been good. Afternoon Delight. Is that Jefferson Airplane? We should have done that one.
Oh.
Should have been our duet at the end of the episode.
Sky
rockets in flight.
Perfect. Okay, hold on, guys. We gotta go record.
Band.
We
are
on fire tonight.
We should start. You know what we should do, Amanda? Is we should host a music podcast.
Okay, I'm in.
It's all wrong answers.
Yes.
It's all everything we say is incorrect.
And I would get it right most of the time, or correct wrong most of the
time
because I wouldn't even know.
It would be effortless. It would be effortless.
It would be perfect. That's like if you ask me anything like actors, like who's this actor? Like hold up a picture of this actor, I'll be like, oh, I don't know. If you don't like, usually if you say that's so and so, I'm like, oh yeah. If you're like, who was in this movie? I don't know. That's why I always hated doing those with this improv, like when you have to be like you have to guess who the famous person is, and it's everybody does actors, like they put actors in the chat, and oh my god,
I'm just horrible at guessing who people are.
It's true. That's like all. If I had the information, it would be great. Right. I don't.
Dari's mentioning what's in the box, of course, from the classic movie Seven, starring Tom Cruise and Samuel L. Jackson.
Yes, that is one of the aforementioned guessing games that I am bad at. You all are right. Correct, Dari.
Well, these are all mysteries.
Yes.
And so we kind of teased your mystery.
Yes. Although I do love this quote from Sam. Because it's true. Sam says, I can barely remember the names of people I know, much less celebrities. Correct. That's and if you aren't in our live chat, come join our live chat because it's a really fun place to be.
So. We're talking to you in the podcast world. Find us on YouTube
next time and join our live chat.
Maybe Amanda will quote you in the next episode.
And also download our podcast and listen to it. Do both like me.
And also, since I know you heard the sponsor shout outs at the beginning of the episode, if you want to sponsor an episode, you can do that for just $10. You can support our podcast and its place on the interwebs.
Yes.
We'll talk more about that at the end of the episode.
We
if
will.
you're interested.
Yes.
But right now, I want to talk about your mystery.
Oh, okay. All right. Oh, I'm so excited. Like I said, I'm excited and nervous and I have everything. So I'll tell you first what I did, or maybe I'll just launch into the story because I tell you eventually what I'm doing. So let me get my mood music.
You are a storyteller extraordinaire, and however you present it to us, I'm sure will be brilliant.
I hope so. Okay, well then, let's give it a whirl. It is no secret that I don't like airplanes. I can't stand the idea of being trapped in a metal tube with hundreds of strangers as we are hurled through the air at about 600 miles an hour, 37,000 feet above precious ground. The moment I'm on a plane, no. The moment I'm in the airport, no, not even that. The moment I'm on my way to the airport, my mantra is, I cannot wait to get to where I'm going. And I have to keep my mind busy on the plane. I have to keep my body occupied just as I'm waiting for takeoff. So I'll pull out my iPad. I turn on one of my favorite shows. I imagine the snack that I'm going to have in about an hour. And I wait for the special treat that I asked David to surprise me with at the 2-hour mark. So I try to pass the time as best I can. And I might also pull out a coloring book, an extra way to distract myself as I contemplate color palettes on the French wallpaper I'm about to fill in. And finally, after an eternity, the captain makes that glorious announcement. Ladies and gentlemen, we are making our final descent. Please fasten your seatbelts and put your trays into the upright position. Whew, thank goodness. I know a lot of people actually like being on planes. They like flying and they're totally fine with it. And
Christina says in the chat right now, she says, I love flying. Heart emoji eyes. So fun.
No, I don't understand you. I think those people are total weirdos. Yeah, for me, it's just a stressful experience, and it's hardly offset by the excitement of where I'm going. And all this is to say that talking about things that could go wrong on a plane is really hard for me. And this story is just a roller coaster. With all that, though, it's just a tale that has to be told. It's one of the most intriguing aerial mysteries of all time. What started out as a routine red-eye flight, a route that was flown twice a day, and turned itself into the biggest aeronautical mystery of all time. The lack of concrete evidence, government silence, classified information, and conflicting stories leaves behind a bewildering and tangled web of possibilities. This is the story of the mysterious disappearance of Malaysian Airlines Flight 370. Yes. It's a story. A lot of you guys have probably heard it because it's almost 10 years old now. It's going to be 10 years next year.
10 years is a blink of an eye, though.
It really is. Yeah. So, Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 began in Kuala Lumpur. So this is what the plane would have looked like. Okay, it's a Boeing 777, and it was scheduled to depart at 12:35 a.m. local time, March 8th, 2014.
It's a red-eye.
Yes. And it would arrive in Beijing, China at 6:30 a.m. The plane carried 239 people, including 12 crew members. That night was a very busy night at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport. There was very heavy air traffic, and that led to a lot of congestion in the air and on the ground. Planes were waiting to be cleared for landing, circling the airport endlessly. And once they're on the ground, a lot of planes had to wait for their gate to clear. And of course, there were delays when taking off and taxiing on the runway. Yikes. I hate that idea. It's the worst to be flying around in circles, just waiting.
You're going to love one of my stories.
Oh, no. The anxiety, it's creeping up already. To add to the pressure of the evening, the 777 aircraft arrived at the Kuala Lumpur International Airport late from its previous flight. It didn't make it to the airport until about 11:30 p.m., leaving only 1 hour to complete the turnaround procedures for the 12:35 flight. Turnarounds often include cleaning the interior of the plane, restocking supplies, refueling, catering food and beverage, maintenance and safety checks, electrical checks, baggage and cargo loading, and then finally loading passengers. So you can see why it actually usually takes a few hours to get the plane ready. And it's all really important stuff.
What? Airplane maintenance is important stuff?
It's fine. It just made a flight. Totally fine.
That was fine. We're going for fine.
Totally, yes. It's going to be the okayest thing. So to add the cherry on top of this difficult evening, and this may be important later, so take a little note of it. There was a delay in loading the baggage onto the plane, which caused a delay in the whole boarding process. Now, I will make it known that I've heard a few conflicting reports about whether or not this turnaround and baggage procedure actually caused a delay of takeoff. So I don't know that for sure. I've seen, yes, it did. I've seen, no, it didn't. Not positive. But I've heard once where it said the departure was actually 41 minutes late. But that would mean that its actual scheduled takeoff time would have been like 12 o'clock rather than 12:35. It didn't take off until 12:41. But I can't find that anywhere. So there's some speculation about that. I can't speak to the truth of that. But it could be important. So it is possible that the plane was delayed so all of the turnaround procedures could be completed. Or it's possible that the procedure was rushed and maybe not fully completed. But I definitely don't like the sound of that. Whatever the answer is to that little mystery, MH370 was finally in the air at 12:41 with its 239 passengers and crew aboard. By all accounts, the beginning of the flight was unremarkable. The plane was on course and they responded to all hails from the ground as expected. At 1:19 a.m., ground control contacted the cabin and informed them that they were leaving Malaysian airspace and instructed them to contact the next air traffic control center. Malaysia 370. Contact Ho Chi Minh 120.9. Good night. Co-pilot Farik Abdul Hamid uttered the final words the world would hear from the plane. Good night, Malaysian 370. And just like that, the aircraft disappeared from radar, never to return. Air traffic control in Ho Chi Minh City was expecting to hear from MH370 as it passed into Vietnamese airspace. But as the minutes passed, the air traffic control grew more and more concerned. At 1:30, the captain of another aircraft attempted to contact MH370 using the International Air Distress Frequency. He reported that he was able to establish a connection, but heard only some mumbling sounds and some static, which is pretty eerie when you think about it.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. The disappearance of the plane from both Kuala Lumpur and Ho Chi Minh City indicates that the aircraft's transponder stopped working. However, civilian and military radar both picked up a plane in the area. But here's the thing. They indicated that the plane they had tracked turned right and then began a left turn to fly in a southwest direction. So what happened is, I'm going to show you this graphic because there's several routes on here. But if you look, the blue line where it says 1 and that blue line that keeps going, that's the route that it took. But if you follow the path that says kind of 2, 3, 4, and then goes down southwest, that's where the civilian and military radar tracks the plane.
So the blue line is the one it was supposed to be on.
Mm-hmm. And then the red route is what we know from the military and civilian tracking. And then the little dotted line that goes south and west is what they kind of started believing happened. So they thought, okay, they're taking this. However, there are theories that it went north. And there's another theory about it actually going more toward China, into the China Sea. So that's what our civilian and military were reporting. Their radar were reporting. So let me get back to us.
Yeah.
And
I think it's similar to what Nicole is saying in the chat. I think probably the passengers were just being, they weren't listening to the pilots. And so the pilots were just like, you know what, we're going home. We're not, I'm going to turn this plane around. We're going straight home.
Don't make me turn this plane around.
That's exactly what happened. They just had it. They were like, you know what?
We're done.
If you're not going to listen, we're going home. And they did.
Yes, I'm sure. That's it. Mystery solved. Thank you, Paul Carganilla.
The pilots were actually very frustrated parents, and the passengers were just giving them too much PTSD.
Yes. So with this tracking, it's also worth noting that neither of these sightings none of these radar trackings were sightings. They simply said a plane flew into our radar and here's where it went, but we didn't see it. Okay, so it's basically assuming that flight was MH370. There's no other planes that they know of that were taking that route. It's a logical assumption to say that, but it's just interesting that nobody saw it.
Sure.
Especially when they're going military radar. But, well, you can talk about that a little later too. At the time, it was widely believed that this was the route that MH370 took. There were some conspiracy theorists who believed that the plane actually went north, which was that one that I showed you too. Here is another unsettling piece of information about this theory, though. Okay, because I started touching on this too. If this is indeed the route that MH370 flew, it actually flew through the airspace of multiple countries. I think there was about 5. And one of those was even directly above the Australian Butterworth Air Force Base. That was in Malaysia. So it's really hard to imagine that there's an Air Force base that picks up a plane on a radar, doesn't look to see who it is, doesn't attempt to make contact. Doesn't that seem weird?
Yes, absolutely. And it's 2 things. As far as I know, not just like Air Force bases or military bases, but any air station has radars that I think record everything.
Right?
Find everything and record everything. As far as I know,
I don't know because I'm not military. I don't have any,
But I think they all have like a black box that kind of just picks up everything and records it. And point 2 is if there's a Butterworth airport or military station, the radar probably got jammed.
Okay. Easily.
Butterworth.
There we go.
Stretch.
It was no. Apparently, it's too cerebral for me.
I'm singing like Spaceballs and
no, that was great.
Their radars, and then there's syrup. I don't know.
They're like spreading it on like toast. Yeah. So
but no, it's super weird how it's like it never noticed a craft that wasn't supposed to be there.
Right. And again, they didn't try to make contact. And as Nicole said, like, we freaked out over a weather balloon.
Yeah. And Disneyland will tell airplanes,
Yes.
"Hey, you're flying too close."
Yeah.
Like
I don't
military
know.
bases didn't say it.
Yeah, I don't like it. But yeah, they should have been able to detect a rogue plane. I mean, think about the amazing tracking capabilities that we have. It's just the
Even
only
10
thing.
years ago. Even 10
Yeah.
years ago.
The only thing is, like, is it possible that they just didn't want to tip their hat to their military capabilities? I don't know.
I guess that is possible.
It's possible. While the transponders and SATCOM, which stands for satellite communications from the plane to the ground, weren't working, the British satellite telecommunications company called Inmarsat found that their satellite data unit, which I'll refer to as the SDU, was still functional. Now, in case you've never heard of this company, Inmarsat provides mobile voice and data services to maritime, aviation, and land-based companies worldwide. Their global network of satellites enables your voice and data communications and tracking even. There's monitoring service, and it just allows it to be sent throughout the world. So like if you're using your internet on your cruise ship, right, it's going into satellites and then coming back down. So that's something that Inmarsat would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
So like I said, they serve land-based, sea-based, air-based. They do it all. And it's a huge company. So and they start to explain to people, because nobody understands how this works, right? When the SDU is powered on, it connects to the Inmarsat satellites with a logon request.
Okay.
After connecting, if no information is received within an hour, the ground station transmits what's called a logon interrogation message, and that's usually called a ping, okay, to make sure that the terminal is still active. So it's like, hey, you haven't said anything to me in an hour. Are you still there?
Mm.
Okay.
Okay.
The plane will automatically respond to that ping as long as the system is functioning. So the captain doesn't have to do anything. It just happens after an hour. So Inmarsat uncovered the following data regarding the flight. So this can be a lot of times, but hopefully you get it. And the whole process is called a handshake. So we have handshake, pings, all this stuff. Okay, so the handshake is the whole complete thing. The plane contacts, the satellite sends another request, the plane responds. It's all called a handshake. So at 2:25 a.m., the first handshake is initiated by the aircraft. So that's when it powered on. The SDU powers on. And then at 2:39, the ground control makes a telephone call. It was acknowledged by the SDU that it was receiving a telephone call, but it went unanswered by the cabin. At 3:41, the second handshake is initiated by the ground station. Okay, because they're like, oh, we haven't heard anything. What's going on?
Sure.
No response. 4:41, and this is getting to be hours after the plane has disappeared. 4:41, the third handshake is initiated by the ground station. 5:41, a fourth handshake. 6:41, a fifth handshake. 7:13, the ground tries to call the aircraft again, still acknowledged by the SDU, but goes unanswered. At 8:10, they initiate a sixth handshake from the ground, still nothing. At 8:19, a seventh handshake was initiated by the aircraft. Now, this is called a partial handshake because it was initiated, instead of like it doing the whole thing, it starts kind of in the middle, initiating with that. The logon request message was transmitted by the aircraft. So that's yet another part of a partial handshake, because it happened a little bit later. And then, so that's I should say, let me make sure you understand what happens. 8:19 and 29 seconds, the seventh handshake is initiated by the aircraft. 8:19, 29.416 seconds, so just half a second later, another message is sent by the aircraft. And then at 8:19:37, another logon acknowledgement message was transmitted by the aircraft. And that was the last message that the SDU sent. At 9:15, there was no more response from the aircraft.
Question,
Yes.
and I probably missed it.
No, it's okay.
With the ping, there's no location.
So what happens is, because that actually is going to come up, but the initially no. So in the actual data, like that Inmarsat is seeing, they don't know where it is. It's just sending the information. They do start to get there though. They will use, because it's like, it's satellite, it should know, right?
Right.
So all of this data, which I just said to you, I know it's a lot of times, but is important. So we'll go through it, because this data that they're looking at is really crucial to what happens and how they start to look for the plane. The first thing that it tells us is that the plane was operational until at least 8:19, which is 7 hours after the last contact. And because the plane didn't respond at 9:15, we know that it was unable to communicate sometime between 8:19 and 9:15. And as for the plane generating a logon request, right, there's only a few reasons that happens. A power interruption, a software failure, a loss of critical systems that input into the SDU, or a loss of link due to altitude. So those are the reasons that we get a logon request. So those happened, the logon requests, in case you forgot. Yeah. The logon request from the plane happened at 2:25, which is almost an hour after the plane lost contact. And then again at 8:19:29, 8:19:29.416, and 8:19:37.443. So all of those times, it seems as if the plane must have lost power and then logged back on. Whew. So
Aliens. It's aliens.
it's aliens. Oh, we'll get there too.
You know, our live chat is on
We love
fire
the
with the alien
aliens.
theory. Of course, that was our last episode.
Yes, love it.
Wow.
Let's see. Yes. So investigators concluded that power loss, out of all those things, power loss is probably what happened. This data also gives us information about how the plane went down. At 8:19, the 777 had been in the air for 7.5 hours. The flight from Kuala Lumpur to Beijing is about 5.5 hours. So fuel exhaustion was very likely. This is calculated using the amount of fuel on board, weight of passengers, cargo, all that kind of stuff. They math and then figure out, this is where we probably would have run out of fuel, and this is about the time we probably would have run out of fuel. When fuel exhaustion occurs, I didn't know any of this, there would actually be an engine flame out. Okay. And then I heard that, I keep hearing that everywhere. And I was like, what is an engine flame out? Does that mean they burst into flames? So what an engine flame out is, it occurs when the aircraft starts to run out of fuel. It happens, or I should say, they experience a sudden loss of altitude and speed. Okay. So the flame out happens, the plane loses some power, loses altitude and speed, and it actually eliminates power to the SDU completely. Okay, but then this thing turns on, which is called the ram air turbine, and that actually sends power back to the SDU and other instruments and flight control to give the pilot a chance to try to get the plane under control.
Okay.
So what it is, it's a little mini propeller that's contained in housing that's connected to an electric generator. Okay. So to get more technical for those of you guys who like that kind of thing, like maybe hunters watching, when it's deployed, it uses like the slipstream air outside the aircraft, and it gets into the turbines and it causes it to spin and get electricity going. So it's literally a generator, right? It's a little fan that spins and makes electricity.
And as someone who's just hearing this from you for the first time, because they didn't cover any of this on Netflix.
I know. Like I said, they were like, and then it was a flame out. And I was like, what does that mean?
So could that have caused all of the login attempts?
That's exactly what they think. So what the theory is, you know how those last ones were like a half a second off, right? So what they think happened is there's a flame out, and then that logs on. So that's one engine dying. And then the flame out log on. That's the second engine dying. And then the plane went down. So that's, they believe that happened sometime between 8:15 and 9:15. So there's one more piece of evidence that shows that. I can't believe they get all of this data just from these little satellite pings. The last 2 requests that we talked about showed that the in-flight entertainment system was no longer active. So that also implies that the power to it was cut off. So another support of the flame out happening at that time. Whew, that was a lot of data.
Yeah.
But like I said, it's all, it's interesting to know how it works.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
We're also interested in the people.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I'm just reading the chat. Sorry.
Yeah. Let's see. Was somebody asking about a specific person?
No, like the theories of like,
Ooh.
could this have been like
Yes.
a pilot thing?
I'm giving you all the background about the plane and what we know happens, but I will get to that. There's
the theories.
some interesting theories. So Inmarsat satellite data played a key role in helping to determine the path of the aircraft. Because remember how I showed you, I don't know where my mouse is. I showed you those couple routes. Let me pull that back up. That people were saying, there were people who, oops, wrong one. There were people who said the plane went north for sure. It went into, some people thought it went into some war zones, into, Russian territory where they were shot down in Ukraine or things like that. Some people think it went into the China Sea. But the satellite data is telling us, no, it went into the Indian Ocean. Okay. And what happens is, let me get back to me for a sec. When they finally figured out this is the route that the plane went, it was groundbreaking, the amount of data and analysis that did it. It was truly sophisticated. And that gave us a rough estimate of the plane's location based on those signals, just like you said. And when I mean rough, though, I mean rough. The satellite data put the plane's crash somewhere in the vast area of the southern Indian Ocean. They induced this by creating arcs based on the satellite pings that they got off that Inmarsat data. So what that means is it follows the path, and then it says at this point they could have been anywhere on this arc. And then when we pinged here, they could have been anywhere along this arc. And anywhere along this arc. There were 7 that they figured out. Okay. And that's actually how they determined the search area, which is huge. Okay. Sure. So this is the search area. Okay. It was initially a massive 23,000 square miles. And as more data was analyzed, the search was expanded to an unbelievable 46,000 square miles. Oh my God.
Holy buckets.
Yeah. Unbelievable, right? Like, how do you even start that search?
Right.
Now, if you're like me, you're probably thinking to yourself, well, what about the emergency beacon? They're supposed to be active in a crash and continue to send signals of the plane's location, right? Sure. And I read about this too. You cannot disable the emergency beacons that are attached to the plane's frame. So they couldn't have been, tampered with or anything. These beacons are powered by batteries and they're totally inaccessible. So you would think that the beacons would have been active in the crash. But there are a few reasons that the beacons wouldn't activate. I did read one report, and I didn't find anything to confirm this, but I did read one report that the batteries were actually expired. Again, can't confirm that, but I did read somebody said their batteries were expired, so they would not have lasted long enough to be found. Again,
maintenance man had one job.
That's what happens when you don't do your turnarounds. But no, I don't know, but it's possible. Another thing is this though. Apparently, I don't know why. I wish it was different. An emergency beacon takes 50 seconds to send its first emergency signal. So if the plane sunk deep into the ocean during that time, so it did like a really fast sink, it would not have been able to send it fast enough for it to actually reach somebody. Like it would be pinging, but it couldn't get through the depths of the ocean. So that's another possibility, is that it sank fast and never got to activate. Also, so it could be damaged in if the plane broke apart, anything like that. But it's crazy. I just didn't realize that any of this was possible, that there could be expired batteries or that it took 50 seconds. It's wow.
That's nothing I ever learned about
Yes.
till tonight. Thank you, Amanda.
Yes. So despite a monumental search effort costing over $100 million, okay, nothing was found. There was no wreckage. Nothing. Its 235 occupants weren't recovered. And there was no oil slicks. There was just nothing. There ended up being some debris recovered on Reunion Island, as well as off the coast of Madagascar. And this was long after the main search had started. And people were kind of like, oh, we're never going to find anything. What they found was a piece of the plane called the flaperon, which is used to slow down the plane during a descent. So the pilot activates it and it goes right up and down. So those are the flaperons to create some resistance. And what they said is it was really crucial because that told them whether or not when the plane went down was somebody trying to slow down the plane. And they can tell that because there's a mark underneath that happens when you use the flaperon. It kind of scrapes. And there was no scrape on it. So they knew that it hadn't been used.
Okay.
Yeah. So they know the pilot wasn't trying to slow down the plane when it crashed. Various other pieces have been found and are considered highly likely to be MH370 due to the fact that they are definitely from a Boeing 777. And that's the only one that was missing in the area. But for there are a few confirmed pieces, but most of them could not be definitively identified.
Of course.
Yeah. So more debris was found. Oh, yeah. Well, I should say the first piece of debris was found on Reunion Island. And self-proclaimed adventurer Blaine Gibson has recovered most of this debris. He came under some scrutiny due to his findings. Because, again, it was actually over $150 million had been spent on the search without a trace of MH370. Right. Gibson says that he just talked to some oceanographers about water currents, went to Reunion Island, and found some debris within a few hours of searching.
Just a few
hours. Yeah, he just walked along the beach and was like, check this out. So I can understand how you'd be like, that's what? All these people who this is their job couldn't find it. And then this guy just walks out onto a beach and finds it.
Well, he talked to some people about water currents.
Yeah, but like as far as the actual finding, he's just like, hey, it's here. Okay, cool. Like, what?
What is that thing about murderers that go back to the scene and act like, ooh, what's going on here?
Exactly. A lot of people feel that way about him. And so there's been a lot of research into him. And as it turns out, there's the journalist who's very, very just all in on MH370. And so when he found about him, he did a huge deep dive and found that Gibson actually had ties to Russia. He had a business there. He speaks Russian. He lived there for a little while. And you might recall, I just very briefly mentioned earlier that there are some people who believe the plane went up north, somehow ended up Russia, Ukraine, in that area. Right. So they're trying to make this connection with Blaine Gibson, who is like, I'm just a guy, right? Like, I'm American. I'm here. Like, I did business in Russia, but that's not a big deal.
Not to be confused with Kelsey.
Yes, not at all.
Sponsor of this episode.
Yes. So yeah, a lot of conspiracy theorists have their doubts about the authenticity of these pieces of debris. Again, a lot of them can't be definitively tied. There's not a lot of serial numbers that match. I don't know. But many, like I said, several family members and journalists have this concern, but most family members are just grateful that he went out and he found something and that he's brought them some kind of closure about what happened. And that first little theory, I will leave up to you whether or not you guys find him reliable. Now, the lack of concrete evidence in this case has sparked numerous theories and speculation. And those speculations range from fun to intriguing to downright bizarre. So I'm going to delve into a couple of them. And we'll start with some of the most bizarre and admittedly entertaining theories. Then I'll get into the theories that have some more heft to them. And if you're not a fan of wild speculation and whimsy and you don't want to have, a little bit of a laugh, you can always skip through this little part. Eventually, we'll try to add some chapters in there for you. And I got your back, you logicians, you. I feel like I'm going to need, for those of you guys who know who this is, Hunter definitely knows, but some other people might watch this YouTuber. I need my own version of Joe Scott's woo-woo alarm right now. There's some woo-woo in here.
How about this one?
Oh no, we're gonna get sued.
Maybe.
That's the Sam Mikulich
Yeah.
woo-woo alarm.
So guys, we're finally here. We're at the theories. The most obvious and probably Dari's most favorite is aliens.
Yes, aliens.
Of course, in almost any event where there's just no explanation, people cry out aliens. And I'll tell you, this is no exception. There's alien theories everywhere. But author Alexandra Bruce claimed that she analyzed data from the tracking website Flight Radar 24. And she was looking at that and then some clips on YouTube of other people's searches of the area, because there were all kinds of satellite pictures released of the areas when a plane disappeared. She said that there was an anomaly on the area where it went down. And she said that it was glitchy. It didn't make sense. Why is it like it was skipping around? There was just this object that she couldn't identify. It was very strange to her. She stated, regardless of whether or not this mysterious object had anything to do with the demise of Flight 370, what is evidence is that the radar readings shown in this clip captured signals from what, for now, can only be termed a UFO.
Only.
Only.
That's all it could be.
I mean, I guess technically you don't know what it is, so.
It's unidentified.
Yep. However, Flight Radar 24 has claimed that the UFO is actually Korean Airlines Flight 672, and the anomalous behavior was merely a glitch on the site. That's it. No big deal. Just a little glitch. The site, it was like merging two pictures together, two videos together, It happens. We've all seen our videos glitch on YouTube. Maybe.
Debunked.
Yeah. So there's no hard evidence for aliens, obviously. But if that's your thing, keep on chasing your dream. Search those skies and let me know when you find them.
Yeah. That lady, she really should have considered technology or the glitching. I wish she would have really thought it through before she.
Yes. And I love this theory. I really love it. And I think it would make actually a really cool, fun little movie, maybe a little short story. I don't know. But the premise of this one is time travel. Dun,
Yes.
dun, dun. This idea was floating around Reddit, and I couldn't help but just put it in here. Go look it up if you want all the details. But the idea is that MH370 actually traveled back in time to the 1970s, landed safely intact, was found by Americans who then reverse engineered the plane to become the original 777. What?
Why would they reverse engineer anything?
Well, because you don't have the technology. So you're like, how would we make something like this work? So then they did the closest that they could. I know it seems weird, but you have to basically downgrade it, right? Because they didn't have all this tracking radars, those kind of things, the technologies that we have today. So they had to downgrade. Yeah. But it became the original.
Because we weren't anywhere close to actually making a plane.
In the 70s.
Like a 777.
No way. Boeing. So it's a fun theory, but so let's move on. Dari says paradoxical theory is too messy. I've been watching actually several talks about time travel, and there's an interesting time travel theory where actually the paradoxes fix themselves as you go, because you can't make them, or else like time just right like doesn't work anymore, so it'll actually adjust. And there's actually some science behind that.
I'm gonna love to hear your thoughts on my third story tonight.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's all about this.
Yes. Ooh, exciting. Okay, so we had our little lighthearted break. We all got our, our spirits uplifted for a little bit. But we have to settle back into the mood of this story. One theory that has been put forth is that the plane was actually hijacked by 2 or more individuals who gained control of the computer system. This blows my mind. It turns out that the brain of the 777, which is called the electronics bay panel, can be accessed by opening up an unlocked hatch near the first class cabin and just climbing down. What? Like,
they mentioned that one on the Netflix series, and it was like, are you kidding? Like, anybody who knows it's down there can just go down there and access the brain of the plane.
Yes. Unbelievable. So it's just this little hatch like this. Like, you can see there's a seat there. There's just a little hatch. All you have to do is pull up the rug. I could not believe it. I don't understand why, like, the most vital systems on the plane are just sitting there.
Yeah. Like, hey, flight attendant, what's that out the window? Quick, go.
Yeah. And that's basically exactly the theory. Is that they just had one guy who made a big scene, right? Drew the attention of the cabin crew. And as all this was happening, the second hijacker just opened up the hatch, slipped in, connected to the plane's computer. And once the hijacker gains control of this brain, they have control of the plane and they can do pretty much anything. The one thing I've heard conflicting reports again is some people say you can change the flight path from there. Some people say you can't. But you can depressurize the plane. You can cut off the oxygen systems. You can cut off all communication to the outside world. Almost anything. If you know what you're doing, you go down there and it's done. So leave the entire plane helpless as they realized what was happening around them. Swift turn that the pilots would valiantly fight against if they could gain control, and they can't do it. They try to call air traffic control. They can't reach them. They put on their oxygen masks and slowly realize there is no air to be had. It's a pretty grim picture. Yeah. I don't understand how that can be, but it's absolutely plausible.
I mean, I hope they changed the access.
I would. There has got to be a lock on that thing.
After that, yeah.
Oh my God. And there was even one small piece of evidence, maybe not so small, but there was a piece of evidence that supported this. One of the early leads in the investigation was the revelation that 2 passengers were traveling on stolen passports. These passports had been stolen in Thailand, and Interpol had even issued a warning about these missing passports several months before the flight. The fact that these passengers were allowed to board the plane is disturbing, to say the least.
Yeah, so they used stolen passports to get on the plane?
Yes. So they stole the passports, got on the plane, and Interpol had said, if you see these passports, do not let them on the plane. These are stolen passports. And they got on the plane anyways.
Wow.
Unbelievable. These 2 passengers were identified as Iranian nationals, and they'd actually purchased the stolen passports in order to board the flight. After a thorough investigation, they actually were not believed to be connected to any terrorist organization or to have even been involved in any criminal activities at all. Instead, they were actually seeking asylum in Europe. And how sad is that? That 2 passengers were seeking a better life, and it was just tragically ripped from them in the middle of the Indian Ocean.
If that's where they were.
If that's where they were, and if that's what happened. Now, I've got another conspiracy theory for you. It's as fascinating as it is tragic. But there's still no solid evidence for this, but it's an interesting theory. This would actually make a really great movie. I tried with the other one making a short story or a little, thing, but this would make a really good movie. Remember those? Oh, I didn't actually mention them earlier. I think I skipped over that part. In the China Sea, which is one of the routes that they've said the plane did not go this way. If you're going to be a conspiracy theorist, we already know you can hack the into the plane. You can do a lot of stuff. I think you can change the flight. I remember now. You can change the flight path that the plane takes. Where it gets tricky is if you can change your pings, basically, like saying we're here, but have the plane be over here.
Oh.
Can you do that from the electronics bay? That's a little iffy. But somebody is basically postulating that can happen, right? The satellite is telling us one thing, but the plane actually went into the China Sea where they were doing some military exercises. Okay. The theory is that the plane was intercepted by U.S. Air Force Airborne Early Warning and Control System planes. These are more commonly called AWACS. So AWACS are a type of aircraft that is used for surveillance and command purposes. And it's totally plausible that they could have been in that area because there were military drills going on at the time. So this is what an AWAC looks like, just so you know. They're very distinctive with that little like disc on the top. AWACS could have detected the plane, but became suspicious when they realized it wasn't showing up on any air traffic control radars. In the pilot's mind, this would have been a rogue plane, and it was headed toward China. So the AWACS would have tried to contact the cabin crew, but as we know, the communication systems were all shut off. Okay. So they would have had no way to respond, even if they wanted to. After several warnings, the plane would have become assessed as a threat, and the possibility of crashing into a populated area, possibly on the scale of like a 9/11 attack, would have been a possibility. With that, they could have made the decision to bring down the plane. Now, it also should be noted that AWACS don't actually carry any armament, no weapons. They're not, they don't have anything. So they would have actually probably had to call for fighters to complete the task. And there's a very similar theory that I also want to mention. So it's the same basic, premise, but a little different. Remember how in the beginning of the story I told you about that plane's baggage taking longer than expected to load?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. French journalist Florence Deschagny did some digging on this subject, and she found that there was a large box loaded onto the plane, and it had a special escort. And it was not scanned. It was not x-rayed. It just came with a report that said it was, things like lithium batteries, little things like that. But it said that there were no x-rays available. So they just put it on the plane with an escort.
So does the escort ride with
it
box?
rides with the box, and it goes all the way to make sure that it gets on the plane, and then they get it on the plane, they see it on the plane, and then the escort can go. It's weird.
Yeah. You know what it was?
Aliens?
Dari she's onto it in the chat. It was the mummy that sunk the Titanic.
Oh my God, yes. Yes,
Wow.
It was the mummy. Yeah, this theory is interesting. That does kind of make me go, oh. Like, there is hard evidence there that something is weird.
Yeah.
Now, she continues her speculations and postulations that the box actually contained some kind of classified technology that China was trying to bring into the country in order to steal. The tech war between China and America is real, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. She believes that Americans would have found out that the 777 was carrying the stolen technology and believed it was of the utmost importance that it not land in China. So they sent 2 AWACS to intercept MH370. And the thing that piques my attention in the story is that AWACS have an incredibly powerful jamming system. So the AWACS actually could have made MH370 invisible to ground control with no way of calling for help. She continues to speculate that the AWACS gave them a direction to land at a separate location, and perhaps the pilots refused the order. knowing that the technology couldn't land in China and MH370 was nearing Vietnam, the IGWAX then ordered the ill-fated 777 to be destroyed. Yeah.
It's a bummer. Have you ever seen the movie Failsafe?
I know that title. I don't think I've seen the movie, though.
It's such a good movie.
I mean, if you tell me who's in it, I wouldn't know anyways. I'd be like, sure, that guy.
Yeah, it's an old movie. It's from like the 60s.
Oh, no.
It had, like Zac Efron and...
I know him from Hairspray.
No, but it's real good. I think it's like Jack Lemmon.
Oh.
I could be way off, but
I wouldn't know.
So there's the president of the United States and the president of Russia, and somehow the United States had accidentally nuked Russia.
Oh.
And Russia's launching this full-blown attack on the U.S. and the president says, you know what if I prove to you it was a mistake, I will nuke one of our own cities just to call a truce and not go to war. And so Russia picks New York, and then the president finds out his wife is in New York. And it's such a good movie.
That does sound good.
Check it out. Failsafe. It's a good one.
Yeah, I feel like there's another movie or TV show that had a very similar premise, which wouldn't surprise me. We make everything. So it's a really interesting theory. It's fascinating. It's riveting. And obviously she's quite an author, and I wouldn't expect anything less from a talented journalist like she is. But I can't help but say, like, where is the evidence? Like, we got that box.
Yeah.
But after that, like, she's just kind of leaping from a speculation to a speculation to another speculation.
We call that circumstantial.
Yeah. And, yeah, a lot of, like, conspiracy theorists are people who really want to just make it happen. You know, you kind of fit new evidence, like, into your theory, right? And just kind of, like, make it work. It's hard. Like I said, after that initial, I don't know where to go from there. But like I said, it's very interesting and gripping. The other thing is, I'm like, what kind of technology would actually warrant that kind of action? Like, what would that? The murder of almost 240 people?
Time travel technology.
Yeah, that's what I was telling David that. I was like, it would have to be like the biggest thing I can't even imagine, but it would just change the entire world, and it just, no, can't happen. I was like, it don't know what it would be, but who knows? It could have happened. It's not likely, but that's kind of what this show is all about, right? Those mysteries that could be. So now, the most tantalizing theory regarding the disappearance of MH370 is that the plane's captain, Zahari Ahmad Shah, deliberately crashed the plane. Okay. He was working for Malaysian Airlines. Let me show you what it looked like. He had been with Malaysian Airlines for over 30 years. He was considered a very skilled pilot and had a vast amount of experience. The theory suggests that Captain Zahari had been experiencing personal and professional issues in the months that led up to the disappearance of the plane. He was facing an impending divorce, and he was also worried about the future of Malaysian Airlines. Having spent over 30 years working for them, he was very invested in the company's future and just believed that it was being horribly mismanaged and it wouldn't survive. He had also become increasingly politically active, and that put him at odds with the country's government. The leading theory is that after signing off with Malaysian Air Traffic Control, Captain Zahari asked his co-pilot to leave the cabin, perhaps get him a coffee, as it was like a red-eye flight. And with his co-pilot out of the cabin, Zahari would lock the door, which we know is pretty much impenetrable, right? Once you lock that door, you can't get in. There's just nothing you can do. Yeah. He would turn off the communication system, reroute the plane. The next step would be to depressurize the plane And from the cockpit, that's really easy to do. It's basically a couple buttons, a flick of a switch, and you're done. As the air began to thin, oxygen masks would have dropped to the from above the passenger's head. They would put them on just as quickly as they could, help their children, their neighbors fit their masks, just like they tell you in the video. The thing is that a lot of people don't realize these oxygen tanks only last about 15 minutes.
Right.
So there would have been like an initial panic, likely a struggle, people trying to get into the cabin, but it would all be for naught. Within a quarter of an hour, the entire cabin would be silent. But what about the captain? It turns out that the captain and the co-pilot, they have separate oxygen system that actually can last them for hours. So there would be a mask for the pilot. There'd be a mask for the co-pilot. He would have been fine continuing to fly, reroute the course, sending it deep into the middle of the vast ocean until fuel exhaustion finally caused the plane to fall from the sky and into its watery grave. This theory hit the media not long after the flight went down. You couldn't see a headline that was saying anything different for a long time. And this compounded when Zahari's house was searched and items were taken away. What those items and information were was actually held secret for a long time. Nobody knew, I want to say for a couple of years at least, exactly what they took and what it meant. It was finally revealed that the data from Zahari's flight simulator was taken in order to be investigated. As it turned out, he had a route very similar to the final flight of MH370. However, there were problems with this. The flight on the simulator wasn't actually flown. He actually just kind of dragged the route along, like you could see his clicks, and he just kind of drug it and then brought it down and basically ran it until the plane would have run out of fuel. So it actually also was hundreds of miles off from the actual flight. It was a really similar path, and on a map, they look really close, but it was more like 900 miles away. So it wasn't the exact, like he didn't plot it on there and then tribed it onto the computer of the plane. So it really wasn't technically the same route.
But still sus.
Yeah, it's still weird. Okay, definitely weird. As investigators continued their search for answers, they looked further into Captain Zahari's life. They determined that his political leanings were not likely a factor in the crash, especially as there was no note or manifesto left behind. Right? If a person's going to make a political statement in such a huge way, they would have been sure to let you know what it was about.
You hope.
Yeah. Any event like this, that's what it would have been like. Typically, a person would just tell you. Like, it doesn't make sense. It's the same reason that they ruled out a lot of terrorist organizations, because nobody came forward. We've seen when events like this happen, there actually have been multiple groups that will come forward and say, it was us, no, it was us, no, it was us. And they have to actually sort through all that information. But nobody came forward with this. So all of those things were starting to be eliminated. And as they started going into this investigation, they concluded that Zahari was actually not at all responsible for the crash, and that he was actually not in control of the plane when it crashed at all. They believe that the course was manipulated by somebody else. It was possibly through a computer or a skilled pilot that overtook the cabin. But either way, Zahari has been officially cleared of any crime. It's one of the few things that they have come out and said definitively about the crash.
We can definitively say it wasn't him, but we don't know who.
But we don't know who it was. Guys, where does all this information even leave us? Once again, my head is left spinning with all of these possibilities. There's so little hard evidence that it seems like anything is possible at this point. There are no answers, and there is no peace to this story. The only thing that we are sure of is that there's a tragic and cruel loss of innocent lives. There are so many family members who are left without answers, and they can't bring their loved ones home. Fathers, mothers, sons, daughters, they all lie somewhere in the Indian Ocean, waiting to be put to rest. They call out their song to anyone who will listen, hoping that one day their story could finally be told. But I hope that the story that I told tonight somehow propels their memory and their legacy forward a little further. I hope that there will be more searches and more information that comes to light. There is hope for a new search within the next year. And I really hope that it brings the victims of the sea and air just truth, so we can finally find them, finally have answers to what happened. Until then, this is another magical mystery of our world, pleading to be solved.
That's the amazing storytelling of Amanda Benjamin. What a just mind-boggling
I know.
case.
And almost any of those things, like I said, they're so far-fetched but plausible. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's hard. Dari, we should put out a poll. What do people think happened?
Dari says in the chat too, she says they're immortalized now. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, this will live on forever, right? In perpetuity.
the flip side is the family never gets closure if there is such a thing.
Yeah. But hopefully, I mean, if you watch any interviews with the family, I wish I had just the same thing, you know, like days to talk, because there's so much about the family and what they're doing and, you know, how they feel. So much still to be said. And, you know, I had to condense a lot of information, and, you know, we talk and we have fun too while we're talking about it, but it's such a story. And yeah, it feels hopeful to immortalize it in some way. And hopefully, you never know, maybe there'll be an impact somewhere in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like, you know, there's still a lot of work to be done on that one. Like so many of them were so long ago, and it was before certain technology was available that it just seems like you could keep looking for that plane, but whatever. But like this one was only 10 years ago, and I feel like even the investigations that are going to happen now anything could help. Any little bit of information could lead to
could. Exactly. Like we get used to this like instant gratification that we have because we have so much incredible technology that allows us to do so many incredible things. When we hit limits, we're confused. Like, how could it be 10 years? You know, it's 9 years right now, but how could it be almost 10 years without an answer? And it's like, no, history has showed us that sometimes these things take that long.
It's like when you listen to investigative podcasts and you get to the end of it and they still don't have answers. Yeah. It's like, wait, what? How could you leave me not knowing? But, hey, guess what? That's the reality of life sometimes.
Yeah, that's exactly. Sometimes things go unsolved, and it is rough, but
this one's still under investigation, so that's...
Yes, and so they do have I think it's called Ocean Infinity is one of the major companies that's been looking, and since the Malaysian government called off the search officially, like they don't fund it anymore, they have to have really new evidence, new and good evidence, basically, to say this is why we need to go out again and search, you know, for this. And they apparently, I read an article and it said that Ocean Infinity has said, yes, we have new evidence, we are presenting it, and our plan is to go out by the summer of 2024. It's a possibility of summer 2023, but more than likely it'll be another year. So hopefully they go out and they find something.
All hope is not lost.
No, it's never lost. There's always hope.
Always hope. Give it up one more time for Amanda Benjamin. Thank you for
Thank you.
putting that together for us. We are going to take a quick moment, but while we do, we're going to invite producer Craig Jackman to tell us about all the exciting stuff that's coming up on the network.
Thank you,
Thank
Craig.
you so much. And I have a theory.
You have a theory. Okay.
I have a theory. Because it reminded me of the movie Tomorrow Never Dies, James Bond, where the plane gets captured by some sort of stealth aircraft and taken down to an island, and plane's gone from that. They use it for parts and whatever.
Could be.
Maybe.
I had a theory too. About
What's
it.
your theory? Like, we should talk about this. Like, what's your
No,
theory?
this was. I mean, this was actually after it actually happened.
Uh-huh.
I did a stand up. Not making jokes about.
I was like,
all the people who died. No, it was so this happened, and then another one happened, and then another one happened. Just disappeared. And that was when we were doing like our first Polly's picnics, and I had to stand up about theories about missing planes, and but we won't go into that now. I've already introduced producer Craig, and producer Craig's here to give us some promos.
Yeah.
All righty. Well, thank you very, very much. And I hope everybody's enjoying our stories here today on the Magical Mystery Hour, Episode 7, Aerial Mysteries. Well, one thing that you can do, of course, we appreciate your support by watching and sharing this video on YouTube. But if you'd like to, we also have tips available for our presenters, both Amanda and Paul. Please feel free to use their Venmo tip jars right here on these two Venmos. And we appreciate it. Again, you don't have to, because we just enjoy the fact that you are joining us here and supporting our great show. Coming up on the Vaudacity Network, the Panano Man, David Benjamin, will be joining us this coming Tuesday, May 2nd. Can you believe we're already in May, starting at 8 p.m.? Classical piano and fresh puns performed live on his beautiful 100-year-plus piano. And just great tunes, great show, great music. David Benjamin, the Panano Man, this coming Tuesday. Followed by our very own Amanda with Amanda on Demanda on Wednesday, May 3rd, starting at 8 p.m., where she sings your requests live. She hasn't had a topic yet that she has shared with us, but once she does, look for the posts and then go to amandaondemanda.com, and there's a little button there where you can put up a request. If she hasn't done a special kind of show theme yet, just put your request there, and eventually it will get put into a show. And she will tag you on it when it comes up on her amazing Amanda on Demanda wheel. So that's this coming Wednesday, May 3rd, 8 p.m. And Hunter Ackerman will be joining us. The makeup for this earlier tonight that Hunter was busy with, 144, Lovecast 144 with Hunter Ackerman, this coming Tuesday next week, May 4th. May the 4th be with us and be with all of us for this Lovecast 144 with Hunter Ackerman, live acoustic originals and covers. Join us on all of our Vaudacity shows here on the Vaudacity Network. You can also go to youtube.com with the /@Vaudacity to find us right here on YouTube and join us. Please also, those of you that are with us right now, subscribe to our network. We really appreciate it. Also like the show and share these shows with all of your friends. We appreciate it. We love you. Thank you very, very much. And that's what's coming up on our Vaudacity Network.
And thank you very, very much, Craig Jackman.
Yay. Thank you, Craig.
Yeah. All right. Well, on the second leg of the show this evening, I'm going to share a few short stories of aviation mysteries that I'm very excited to share. And of course, we end every show with a duet.
Yes.
But before I tell my stories, Amanda sings or performs her tune on the theme. And when it came
Yes.
to aviation, etc., were you inspired to do, and why?
I was trying to think of something, and it was hard because um I don't think we talked about that on air. I think I said it um offline, I should say, when we were doing our sound check, and I was like,
Mm.
yeah, I considered the same song Paul did, Leaving on a Jet Plane. And I was like, but after saying my story, because I know that comes after I say my story, I was like, I think it's too much. Like before it makes sense. I was like, afterward it's gonna hurt. It's gonna hurt me. So I was like, no, and I was trying to find a song. And it's so funny because I still ended up kind of singing a song that still has that sentiment, a little bit different. And it's a lovely song, and I feel like it's never done enough. I landed on John Lennon's "Free as a Bird."
I love that.
Me too.
And
It's
are
a
you going to play
beautiful-
guitar? Are you going to accompany
I'm
yourself on
going
guitar?
I was going to, but actually it was funny because I listened to it, and David was sitting there, and I really love the version of John Lennon's demo for it. It's all piano, and it's just really nice. And like I said, David was sitting there, and he was like, oh, like maybe I should play it. And I was like, oh, okay. Like we don't always do that. Like sometimes because it was only, what was that? That was Tuesday night. And like, if we don't have a lot of time, sometimes it's like, oh, it's too stressful, never mind. But David recorded it for me today. So I was really excited. So I'm going to have a little acoustic piano version.
As opposed to, I guess, electric piano is a thing. Yeah.
Well, I was saying acoustic, like as an acoustic version, but also piano, like
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
I don't mean an actual like acoustic piano, although there are digital pianos. So.
Yes. Well, can't wait to hear it. I love any time that you and David work together and perform together, and can't wait to hear Amanda Benjamin accompanied by her husband.
All right. Oh, hang on. Wait. I got to change the camera setting. I got too excited, you guys. All right. Here I am, full screened. All right. Here we go. Free as a bird, it's the next best thing to be. Free as a bird. Home and dry, like a homing bird I fly, as a bird on wings. Whatever happened to the life that we once knew? Can we really live without each other? When did we lose touch? That seemed to mean so much. It always made me feel so free as a bird. It's the next best thing to be. Free as a bird. Whatever happened to the life that we once knew? Can we really live without each other? As a bird, it's the next best thing to be, free as a bird, free as a bird, free as a bird.
I loved that.
I love that song. Ugh, reverb.
I loved that version. I mean, yeah, it's a great song, but that version of that song.
Oh man, yeah, it's beautiful. I love it. Definitely one I should, record, and we'll put it for sure.
Absolutely.
On,
Yes.
on the podcast, and I don't know how long, but it'll be on the podcast.
Great job, David and Amanda.
Oh, thank you.
Together.
Thanks.
Love when you guys perform together, and that was freaking beautiful.
Thanks.
Great job.
Oh man! And now, as I always say, I'm like at the point where I'm like, oh, okay, now I can relax.
Yeah, I can relax
I
and
can relax
listen
now.
to a few mysterious tales.
I'm so excited.
Mysterious mystery tales.
I
I
love them.
don't know if I'm on the screen, but as soon as I am,
Oh, sorry. I
That's
should.
all right.
Like, see,
No.
I got too relieved.
yeah.
Too relieved that I'm done. And then I'm like, all right, bye guys. I'm done.
All right. Well, as we mentioned 2 episodes ago, we did nautical mysteries, and I did a couple of tales from the Bermuda Triangle, and that's where I'm going to begin. I have a trio of stories this evening. Each are equally mysterious and fun to chat about. But the first one, this is the one that is on the forefront of my mind as far as the intrigue goes. It's well documented, and it's our most recent. We're gonna go back in time with the other stories, but this one happened in the 70s. Actually, it began.
Was it on a Boeing 777?
No, it was a much smaller aircraft. So as soon as I find my button, I will dive in to the story of a fella by the name of Bruce Gernon. We'll show you what he looks like today. As he still tells his tale. This is from a History Channel show that was shown recently, and this is how he looks to this day. But again, what happened occurred in actually 1970. His flight left on December 4th of 1970. I should tell you where he was, what he was doing. He was in the Bahamas. He was a businessman and a pilot. His father was also a pilot. And this particular day, he was flying his small aircraft called a Beechcraft Bonanza single engine. It's a single engine, like a Cessna type of aircraft. And they had 3 of them in that aircraft. So it was Bruce was flying. His dad was in the passenger seat, I believe, and his business partner was in one of the 2 back seats. And they left Andros Island in the Bahamas on December 4th, 1970. They were headed to Miami, Florida. It was a western flight, about 250 miles, usually took about 90 minutes. He was not new to this flight. From what I read, he had made this trip at least a dozen times in his aircraft, and this day seemed like all the other days. Until they're taking off, they're climbing approximately 1,000 feet off the ground. They see ahead of them what is described as a spherical ball-shaped cloud growing.
Ooh.
It starts out small and it just starts to grow. And this is a photo of a different cloud. This isn't the cloud, but this is what it supposedly looked like as they start climbing into the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And it just started to expand and grow in front of them. And Bruce thought it was kind of odd, but it was still kind of smallish at the time that they were about to hit it, so he decided to just keep his course and fly straight through it. And he did. They made it through this, though odd occurrence, this strange cloud.
Mm-hmm.
No problem, made it right through, kept climbing. They climbed and they climbed till about another 10,000 feet later. They were at an altitude of 11,500 feet when another cloud, very similar looking, appeared in front of them.
Okay.
This one was darker in color, and so they started to think it was kind of a weather event. And we'll talk a little bit more about the mysterious weather events in the Bermuda Triangle, of course. I mentioned this was technically in the Bermuda Triangle. They were leaving from the Bahamas to Miami, so it was kind of in the heart of the Bermuda Triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And the triangle is known for high pressure systems and low pressure systems kind of always being at odds and creating all kinds of interesting storm activity. And they just thought, this is just what that is. Another weird cloud in front of them, but darker. So they go into it. But once they get into it, it becomes very clear to them that this one is different. They described outside becoming dark as night. It was so dark inside the cloud that he started to think, should I radio back and make sure we're okay? So he goes to his radio on the plane and it's dead. Silent. All the other gears in the plane are working. He's got his compass, he's got his all of his guides are still working. They're on the right track, so he's not worried. He's just, it's weird
Right.
that the radio is not working. What he doesn't know is at this time he disappears off the radar down on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
So once they enter this cloud, the airplane is gone from the radars on the ground, and his radio is no longer working. They flew further through the cloud. Now in his brain, in his mind, he's just thinking, we're just going to fly through it and come out the other side, and it's going to be fine. Just stay your course.
Okay.
Then they start to experience white flashes around them, like lightning.
That's what I was thinking.
Electrical flashes.
Okay.
That it would go from, they described it as, it would go from dark as night to the brightest of brights.
Uh-huh.
And they just kept going. Again, he's checking all his compasses, his navigations, all of his tools seemed to be working fine, except
so
the
his compass
radio
wasn't spinning.
Correct.
Okay.
Not yet.
Not yet. It might happen.
So he's just of the mindset, and I'm sure he was talking to his dad, like, let's just keep keep going. We'll fly through it. It's going to be fine. But this is what like blows my mind. They flew through this thing for what they described as a half an hour, 30 minutes, just driving through this flying through
that.
this
I just got
darkness
chills.
with flashes.
Mm-mm.
30 minutes.
Yep.
I would be like, should we turn left? Should we turn right? Like, should we find a way out of
Can we
this?
U-turn, guys?
But they're like experienced pilots, so they thought it would be best to just keep going straight.
Yeah. I
Oh.
understand that. At a certain point, it's...
Yeah. So finally, after this 30 minutes, which must have seemed like an hour,
eternity.
goes by, he sees a light at the end of the tunnel. And he sees blue skies ahead in like a circular form. Like it literally looks like they're in a tunnel.
Okay.
And as they get closer to it, he describes it as closing, like like an Indiana Jones type moment where like they have to get to the end before it closes.
Oh my God.
And at this point, all of his instruments start going crazy.
So the compass does start spinning around.
Compass spins.
Every cartoon I've
nothing's-
ever seen has told me that this would happen.
Nothing's working. He tries to finally start navigating. He can't. It's just being like sucked toward this hole, and nothing's working. And they said it seemed like about 20. This went on for about 20 seconds, which
Okay.
of course, probably felt like forever as well. Holes closing. Finally, boom! They hit the end of it, and burst out of this cloud, and they experience weightlessness for 5 seconds,
What?
and then everything in the plane just rights itself.
Okay.
So they all kind of just look around at each other, and they're not in the blue skies
Okay.
quite yet. It's still kind of like a cloudy haze.
Okay.
But it's not dark. It's still light. They know it's daytime. And the plane's working fine. All of his instruments are working fine.
Okay.
So he decides to try his radio.
Right. First thing I would do.
He gets on the radio. A dispatcher or whatever they're called, ground control, picks him up. And he says, he identifies himself. And he says, I just want to make sure I'm on your radar. And the person on the other side of the radio says, yeah, I've got you. And you're clear as day. You're good. And Bruce says, okay, where am I? And the person on the radio says, you're in Miami airspace. And Bruce and his dad look at each other, and it's been 45 minutes since they took off
Right.
on a flight that normally takes them 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And they say, well, that's actually not possible.
Yeah,
because
right.
And he's looking at his fuel gauge. His fuel is like half of what it should be if they're in Miami. And they're just kind of like
Confused.
Something is not right about this. Finally, they get through the clouds and the mist, and they see Miami.
Okay.
He lands the plane,
He's like, this is real.
and they start to kind of examine what happened.
Right.
Now, one thing is that this plane is capable of flying 180 miles per hour. Like, that's its top speed. And based on their 47-minute flight, it had to be going like an average of 320.
Wow.
Which is
Yeah.
almost twice what it's capable of. Something I read said the plane would have fallen apart if it was going
Right.
that fast.
Yeah.
They also noted that, and this is like in the logs, the plane had twice as much fuel in it when they landed than it should have.
Right. That's perplexing. Like,
So-
and the only thing I can think of, like, if you think about logically, because I don't know the answer, is like, would he normally like fill up to full, or as I learned with with my story, they put in the amount of fuel you need plus what you would need if you were diverted to a certain other airport. So, like, is it possible that he put, like, more in than he realized? But I can't imagine if he did that flight often.
Yeah.
You would know.
Yeah, he said, I mean, he'd done it over a dozen times,
Yeah.
he said. And, that was very baffling to them.
Yes.
So one thing that they started to think of was these thunderstorms that sometimes take place. I mentioned the high pressure and the low pressure kind of smash against each other. And I guess this creates something called ionized air, which is like air that's charged with electricity.
Okay.
And this is what a lot of people will blame for planes that disappear in the Bermuda Triangle or just go down inexplicably. Okay, thank you. Was that sometimes just in this area of the world, the weather creates these electrical storms that just take planes down.
Yes.
And so one of the theories is they slipped into some sort of seam in this electrically charged weather event that just shot them forward, like turbo boosted, shot them forward.
Yeah. But how would they not have broken up? Like, it would like rip the wings off, you would think, traveling twice as fast as your plane was built for.
I mean, I imagine turbulence.
Yeah.
When I'm in a plane flying in regular
conditions.
I can't imagine like the shaking. And
I know.
It's crazy to think about. But another thing they thought they considered, or something that happened that day that they kind of marked as also being odd, was that the sun had really unusual activity as far as like the sunspots and solar winds.
Okay.
That particular day in the world, in the history of the world. So they're thinking maybe somehow that had something to do with it.
Okay. I mean, I don't know. Every time I always hear about the sunspots and solar flares, and I'm like, oh no, this is going to be the end of everything. Like all the technology aside, and then nothing ever happens.
Did you hear about this past Sunday?
No.
Oh,
I'm shocked because I hear it all the time.
This past Sunday was supposed to be the end of the world with the solar flares, and some UCLA researcher said that Sunday the 23rd of April was going to be it. It came out like a week or so ago. But
I'm glad I didn't see that one because I would have been at home all day being like, oh man, this is it. I'm going to watch some TV.
That's what you would have done on your last?
No, because, well, see, I would have been like, no, it's not happening. That's just dumb. And then I'd be like, oh, but it might. And I'd be like, I'm just going to sit here. I'm just going to sit here and see what happens. It's okay.
Give my puppies extra kisses today.
Yeah, I know. But they're going to come back and be like, oh, sorry, we meant the 30th. Sorry. Like, wait. The 7th. That's the day.
Well, one last theory that I'll touch on is one that I don't know a whole lot about. And it's a theory surrounding a thing called dark energy.
Ooh.
Have you ever heard of that?
I mean, obviously it's got to be different than like dark matter. Are they related?
I don't know.
Because I know about dark matter, but
I was about to do a deep dive into dark energy. And then I thought, you know what? I'm going to hit up my friend who probably knows a lot about this.
An expert.
And I texted him, and it turns out he does know a lot about it. And so I'd like to bring on the Vodacity Network's resident expert on dark energy. Since we missed him.
We have an expert on dark energy.
Since we missed him earlier tonight on the Lovecast. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Magical Mystery Hour for the first time, Mr. Hunter Ackerman.
Yes. And let me also, because he's probably here. Hold on. But we can't see him, so I have to.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I should have told you this was happening.
Greetings and salutations.
Hi. Okay, so let me.
It looks like it's daytime over there,
Okay,
Hunter.
hold on.
That's
Now we can see a little
just
bit of.
my lights. Yeah, the modern
Hold on.
miracle
We're
of
gonna get a lot of
LED
weird stuff.
technology. All right.
Okay.
Amanda's panicking because she had no idea this was happening.
Hold
Oh, dear.
on.
So she's trying to fix her OBS, but it's fine.
And
Okay. We
Sam,
had the funny little grid
Sam,
thing going
how
on.
do I get rid of my non-video participants? I forgot. Hold on.
Ask them to leave politely.
Give me a sec while I pull up all my settings. Hold on.
All right.
It sounds like you're near the airport.
I
Oh,
do
yeah.
live near the airport, so yeah, that is not coincidence.
That's very fitting for this tale.
Hell yeah.
Had you ever heard this story before?
Not this particular one. No. I've heard plenty of variations on the Bermuda Triangle stuff, and but not this particular one. No.
So after hearing it, what do you think? Or first of all,
Okay.
Can you give us a nutshell of what dark energy is? It the same as dark matter, or are they different?
Okay, so yeah, good question. Let's calibrate some axioms here. Should I start the explanation or wait for Amanda to get the thing
It's
lined
not
up?
great, but we can see you, so I'm gonna live with the black bars and misaligned
Okay.
videos. It's very hard. Like Sam, I know you're watching, and
She's so
Sam and I
mad at
have
me.
like this equal hatred of like the videos that are like one side is slightly higher than the other one. And like there's a little black
Take your
no,
take
it's
your-
fine. There's
line it up.
very, very little way that I can fix it to make it look right. I can make it look a little better, maybe.
Note to
No,
self:
not
Okay.
so much.
don't surprise Amanda anymore.
Oh no, it's fine. I just laugh because I'm like, oh man, Sam's watching. No, see, hate
Very
this.
possible he's gone to bed. So I think
That's
you're
true. So I don't know if you're watching the cast right now, but what happens with Windows, and I love it sometimes, but right now I hate it, is you get too close to top and it's like, let me align it for you, and then it moves you around.
Oh yeah.
Can
Can you
Oh.
just show the zoom? Can you just show the zoom window?
I can get rid of me.
Oh no,
Then you
never
can.
mind.
Nah. I
This
know.
is good. I like
No,
this.
this is good. Like I said, it's just a little off center, but it's okay.
I have the show on my living room television that I can see through the glass door here through. So.
I'm happy
Okay.
with it. Yeah, let's hear
Yeah,
about this.
let's hear about it.
Okay, so like concisely, what's the question? Dark matter and dark energy. Let's just like define some terms. You want to start
Yeah,
there?
because
I
you're
thought maybe
looking
they were
at-
the same thing because I'd never heard of dark
Okay.
energy, so I brought up dark energy, and then
And then
Amanda
I
Gotcha.
said the same thing.
Is
I
it
was
the
like, I
same
know
as
about
dark
dark matter, but not dark energy. Are they somehow related?
Okay, they're probably not related.
Oh.
Here's the thing.
Okay.
We're giving both of these terms a placeholder for something that we know we don't know. It is a known unknown, to paraphrase Donald Rumsfeld.
Okay.
So what's going on with dark matter is a different question than what's going on with dark energy. What's going on with dark matter is this is a placeholder. So you know how if you were to take like a yo-yo at the end of its string and just like whip it around your head in a big circle, right?
Sure.
The yo-yo produces what feels like an outside force pulling against your hand in a constant circle.
Yeah.
If the string is not strong enough, if the string is brittle or frayed, and the yo-yo is, let's say, not a yo-yo, but a brick, suddenly the string might break and the yo-yo flies away. All right. So this is kind of a function of how fast it's going in a circle around your head. What we know by looking into deep space at other galaxies, including our own, actually, is that galaxies, for some reason, stay together despite how fast they're spinning. They're spinning so fast, typically, that they should be flying apart. But instead, despite that we don't, it's gravitational attraction that's holding them together.
Mm-hmm.
But if you add up the masses of all the suns and stars and nebulae and all the gas giants, all the stuff in any particular galaxy, there's not enough matter that should be able to hold it together for how fast it's spinning. And so the placeholder we give that missing stuff is dark matter. We don't know what it is. We don't know even that it is stuff. We don't even know that it is matter. It might just be that gravitational theory on that large a scale just breaks down and works differently, and that all the matter is accounted for. But the history of assuming that we know all the things and that we just haven't put it together does not exactly work out for us in the history of science. Like, yeah, there's usually a lot of shit we're not yet privy to, and in this case, there's a lot of missing matter.
So just to break it down, because I'm not the smartest, you're saying if the gravitational pull is basically the string, the string would, the absence, there's no string, but the planets are still doing this. So what should be the string is what we consider to be dark matter.
So basically, the yo-yo in our analogy, the yo-yo of galaxies, are all spinning so fast the string should break.
Right.
Or the gravitational attraction should be overcome, and the galaxy matter should just like scatter out.
I see.
But for some reason, it isn't. And
there's the strength that's holding it all together. And what is that muscle? Right. It is the dark.
Why is gravity holding the stuff together in a way that it's not flying apart wildly? And this applies to, I think, every single observable galaxy.
Gotcha.
The weird thing is that it applies more to some galaxies than to others. So it's not just like a uniform thing of like, if we just slide or adjust our notion of what gravity should do on those scales, it just fixes the whole problem. It might be that we need to alter our theory of gravitational attraction on that sort of scale, but it's not as simple a question as one linear fix solves all of the problems for all of the galaxies. It's like we would have to tweak this one by this much, and this one by a different amount, and this one by a different amount still, and they don't quite match up. So one explanation in this realm is called modified Newtonian dynamics. But I don't want to get too far afield. All I'm saying about dark matter, to give you this definition, is there's stuff we know we don't know. And it would be a very convenient explanation if that stuff was some form of matter that we're not aware of.
Gotcha.
Right.
It makes sense.
That's dark matter in a nutshell.
You explained it in a way that I could understand. So thank you.
Right on. Oh, hey, I'm glad to help.
So what about dark energy?
Dark energy is something else. So it would be a weird coincidence if both of these were burning the candle at both ends to the same phenomenon, because all we're doing with dark energy is similarly putting a placeholder in on something else about the universe we don't understand. And so it would be a weird coincidence if those two were the same thing, or if those two were in any way, shape, or form related phenomena. It just sounds like it's the same thing because, again, the convenience of our semantics, we're using this dark word as a placeholder for something we know we don't know. Dark energy. So my boy, Isaac Newton, one of my favorite thinkers in history, not somebody that I'd probably want to drink with because he's probably kind of an asshole in person, but as far as like his contribution to human understanding of how the universe objectively works, Isaac Newton. Just Isaac fucking Newton. So when we look into the history of the things that he got wrong, those are very interesting sorts of things to look at. And one of the things that he did indeed get wrong is he thought that the universe is a constant unchanging entity, i.e., that time is always has been, always is, always will be, and that the shape of the universe, the shape of galaxies, the shape of things don't really change. They're just invariant. They just are. They are constant. It turned out he was wrong. That the universe is expanding, and it took Einstein to come along and point that out. One of the more recent discoveries is that the expansion of the universe. Now, when I say that the universe is expanding, just to give you a kind of an idea on this, is that any 2 points in space that you can imagine are inherently moving away from each other. And it doesn't matter where they are, and this does not originate from any center. Any point you look at in space can be considered to be the center, and any other point in space is moving away from that point.
Okay.
The farther things are, let's just arbitrarily define you as the observer as the center for the moment. The farther things are away from you, the faster away from you they are moving. So you can kind of visualize this if you were to imagine an inflated balloon, and you've got little marker Sharpie polka dots on the outside of the balloon. As you inflate the balloon, all of the dots on the balloon get farther away from each other. And the further 2 dots are away, the faster that expansion happens. The closer the 2 dots, they still are going away. They're just going away from each other slower than dots on the opposite side of the balloon. All right. So that's kind of a good, like, dumbed down for we evolved 3-dimensional primates to kind of wrap our heads around conventionally what it means that the universe is expanding.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just to set the stage of what we know we don't know. For whatever reason, this expansion, it was thought for a long time that this expansion would eventually be overcome by gravitation, the attraction of mass to other mass, or matter to other matter, or stuff to other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It was thought that for the longest time that the gravitational attraction of things to other things would slow down this cosmological expansion.
Mm-hmm.
But it isn't.
Okay.
Not only is cosmological expansion not slowing down, it's not even expanding at a constant rate. It is, for some inexplicable reason, speeding up.
Mm.
So the universe is expanding faster today than it was 1 million years ago. I mean, it's literally expanding faster today than it was yesterday. We just talk about these things in large time so that we can really appreciate the difference. So the universe is expanding dramatically faster now than it was 10 billion years ago. We don't know why that's happening. And we conjecture that there's some sort of energy at work that is not only making this expansion already happen, but is then pushing this expansion to speed up. It takes a force, or it takes energy to speed things up. That's what we mean by inertia. Newton described this as F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration. It takes energy to provide that force to accelerate anything. For some reason, the expansion of our universe is speeding up, and we don't understand why that is. So as a placeholder for what we know we don't know, we call that dark energy. Whatever this dark energy phenomenon is causing the expansion of the universe to happen faster and faster and faster.
I'd never heard of that before, and that is fascinating.
Okay.
And after hearing the story of this pilot's plane, if somebody's, I mean, I don't even know how to equivocate it to dark energy as it was just explained, but that is a theory. Is there anything
Maybe something about that, like speeding up faster and faster and faster, hooking into it?
Okay, let me put it this way. I doubt it's related because of a bigger mystery. There's so much we don't understand about the universe. To tie two arbitrary mysteries together as to what happened to this dude in the Bermuda Triangle and what we know we don't know about cosmological expansion, to just say, oh, well, clearly those are related, would just be inane. Like, no, it probably is not a related phenomenon. It would be bizarre if it were. However, it would also, I gotta say, be extremely useful if it was related. Because something like a plane disappearing is a studyable phenomenon. And right now, we don't really have any good, insightful way to study dark energy. Right now, we have a lot of our best theoretical physicists banging their heads against drawing boards, trying to figure out what dark matter might be. Mm-hmm. There are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in your philosophy. But to tie a couple of these arbitrary unknowns together as causal is probably a non-starter.
Gotcha. I guess I'll have to do a little bit more research.
Thank
you so much for dropping that knowledge on us, ladies and
gentlemen. My pleasure.
Joining us on our Vodacity network expert on all things dark matter and energy.
I love it.
First guest on the Magical Mystery Hour. Give it up for Hunter Ackerman.
Yes.
I'm honored to be be the first guest. Thank you very much. I love this show.
Love you, buddy. Have a good night.
Glad
love
you're
you,
a
man.
fan.
I very much am.
Godspeed on that project.
Yes.
Thank you.
Go get it.
Thank you. I'm working my ass off. I'm getting back to it now, in fact. Good night.
All right. Night.
Hunter Ackerman.
Yeah.
He took a little break from the project he's working on. He's doing an audiobook, and I asked him to come on and explain dark energy and how awesome that he did that. Thank you, Hunter.
Yeah.
It's wild to think of, like, if the way he was describing it, I started to think of dark energy as like an anti-gravity. Like if gravity pulls, like maybe dark energy is what pushing.
Maybe, because did look up while we were talking about it too, because I wanted to make sure I was getting it, and I was like, okay, so let me look up like a quick definition, right? So something that's concise. And what it says is, it's a hypothetical form of energy that exerts a negative repulsive pressure, behaving like the opposite of gravity.
Okay.
So I know Hunter's already gone to, refute or or not, or affirm. But if that's, if you could say it's like that, it's a repulsive pressure, it's behaving, again, maybe not exactly the opposite, but something like the opposite of gravity.
Yeah.
I could see how then you can tie that in to say, like, maybe it was pulling the plane. Right?
Yeah.
That's my...
If this dark cloud was some sort of form of dark energy, like pulling the, like, come on, let's go. I could see that. Yeah. I could also see my ex-girlfriends describing dating me as dark energy, in that it was negative, repulsing.
Perfect.
All right, let's jump into another Bermuda Triangle tale. This one is probably one of the most well-known. This is the tale of Flight 19. Flight 19 was a training mission, and it took place back in December of 1945. Just to strange side note. This took place on December 5th, 1945, and our first story, Bruce Gernon, was December 4th, 1970, also in the Bermuda Triangle.
Lots happened in the 70s.
So this is a training mission that took off from the Naval Air Station of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. And the training mission consisted of 5 torpedo bombers called TBM Avengers going out to sea to just do a quick routine mission. It was called Flight 19 because this was the 19th group this day that was completing this mission. And the plan was to fly out to a point in the ocean, drop some torpedoes in the water. I don't know if they were like training torpedoes, if it was different, and then they were going to fly up north of some other islands and then head back home. And Craig, if you want to show the next slide, the area map, this is a pretty basic idea of what they were going to do. They're taking off from point 1. They were dropping bombs at the B. They were going to fly to point 2 and make a left, and fly up to point 3 and make another left and head home. That was their mission, and it was all ironically to practice with navigation. And it was, like I said, routine. So they flew out and they dropped their bombs, and that all went off without a hitch. But then somewhere along the line, something went wrong. And I'll just talk about the pilot for a quick second. The leader of the training group was a gentleman. He was a United States Navy lieutenant by the name of Charles Carroll Taylor. He had over 2,500 flying hours under his belt, mostly in this type of aircraft. And all the trainees that he was taking out on the flight with them, it had about 300 hours total flying these types of aircraft. And among the 5 planes, there were 14 pilots or naval officers. And so they flew out, and as I mentioned, they did their bomb dropping practice, and that all went off without a hitch. But after they made their first left turn, things kind of seemed to get a little confusing. I'm going to go ahead and just basically paraphrase what Wikipedia says about it. The flight was continuing along their heading for another 77 miles. And then they turned, they made that first left turn, as I mentioned, and it was supposed to go another 84 miles north over the Grand Bahama Island. Unfortunately, something between these left turns went wrong. The weather got kind of bad, visibility got kind of bad, and suddenly they seemed to be a little bit off course. And this whole time, they're still being able to be picked up by the radio operators back at home base. And the radio, they can hear the conversations that are being had between the pilots, and they realized what was happening. And one of the pilot students was reading his compass and asked the main guy, Powers, for his reading. Mm-hmm. And Powers replied, "I don't know where we are. We must have gotten lost after the last turn." So then Cox, who's another one of the trainees, says to Powers, "This is FT-74. Please..." Oh, I'm sorry. I got a little lost here. FT-74 plane or boat calling Powers. Please identify yourself so someone can come help you. So this was someone back at the base. He's listening into their conversation, and he can tell they're a little bit confused. And then a pilot named Taylor came on the radio and said, FT-28, this is FT-74. What is your trouble? And then the main, the teacher teaching the mission, I'm going up on his name right now. But he says, both of my compasses are out. And so these planes had two different kinds of compasses. And as far as I could understand from the things that I read, one was they both were supposed to always be working. But if one wasn't working, the other one definitely would be.
Right.
But for some reason, both of his compasses were out. And he says back to the person at Fort Lauderdale, I'm trying to find Fort Lauderdale. I'm over land, but it's broken. I'm sure I'm in the Keys, but I don't know how far down I am and how to get to Fort Lauderdale. And they're all together. These 5 planes, all, they don't split apart. So the one guy who's supposed to be leading them back to base is now admitting something's going wrong. My compasses aren't working, and we're not where I thought we were. We were.
Yeah.
So they advised Taylor. Thank you. Taylor was the leader, to put the sun on his port. So put the sun on your left based on the time of day that it is right now.
Right.
You'll be flying north. If you're in the Keys, like you say you are, if you put the sun on your left, you'll be flying north to Fort Lauderdale. And then base operations started calling each other to try and triangulate where the radio signal was coming from for the planes, so they can try and figure out, help the guys figure out where they are.
Right.
So Taylor says, we're heading 30 degrees for 45 minutes, then we'll try to fly north. So they told him fly north, and Taylor's like, we're going to do this. We're going to fly east for another 45 minutes, then we're going to fly north to make sure we're not over the Gulf of Mexico, which none of it's making sense.
Right. What?
And during this time, everyone on shore is kind of going, why won't he just
do what we're telling you?
Just fly north right now.
Yeah.
Just do that. But he was like the highest ranking officer. And so there's been a lot of speculation since then. Like, why didn't the other trainees on his crew just tell him, no, dude, I'm going north. I'm sorry. But it was very structured the way the Navy is, chain of command. You don't go against what your training officer says. So then back on land, they try to tell him, switch to this frequency so we can better find you on the radio. It has something to do with how different radio frequencies can be tracked or whatever, pinpointed, triangulated. And he says to them now at this point, no, I can't, because then I can't talk to my team.
Right.
So he refuses to do the tracking thing because he wants to stay in touch with his trainees. They're saying at 4:56 that afternoon, the folks on land again asked him to turn on his locator translator. He didn't even acknowledge that they asked that. And a few minutes later, he advised his trainees to change course again, 90 degrees east. They're going to go east again for another 10 minutes. And at that time, the radios on land picked up their conversation, and one of the trainees said, damn it, if we could just fly west, we would get home. Let's head west, damn it.
Right. Okay.
And it was just like, it's one of the more haunting, if you watch like a documentary about this, it's haunting to hear them like arguing over where they're going, but no one wants to actually break away from the path.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, you got to do it.
And it's one of those things where it's like, this guy, the leader, is clearly not in his correct headspace. He keeps telling him to go east. And if you're trying to get home, why would you be going east?
Yeah, it doesn't make sense at all. Like, I mean, that's the thing about military, though, is like, no matter what, you do what your commander tells you, even if it's not logical, you do it.
Yeah.
You know?
You
Or else
follow,
it's, or else it's like
orders.
you get into mutiny territory.
That's right.
You know, and it's like if you mutiny and you save the day, maybe you're okay. But if something goes wrong, it's bad news. So you have to be very sure. And
It's very easy to what do they call it? Monday morning quarterback, and
oh yeah,
reflect on all the things you should have done. But
Mhm.
like, yeah, these guys are just trained to follow orders no matter what.
yeah, and you figure
it's
this
just
guy
wild.
knows, what he's in.
So the weather keeps getting worse and worse,
Mhm.
and so the radio contact with land is getting worse and worse.
Mhm.
And it's believed at the time they're like 230 miles east of Florida at this point. So at this point, Taylor, he radios, we're going to fly 270 degrees west until we hit landfall or we run out of gas. So at this point, he's like, we'll just turn it around and go west now. So he finally asks land again to check on the triangulation, whatever they're using.
Mhm.
And at this point, they were able to just kind of based on their radio traffic, find about where they were. And if we can bring that old map back, or the map we just looked at, thank you, Craig. Now at this point, they're somewhere in the 4, based on the towers that are picking them up and how strong they're picking them
Mhm.
up. So they actually ended up somehow north. They just kept trying to go east and they ended up north. And so now they're going to try and fly west finally. So they just make an all out effort to just head west at that point.
Right.
And Taylor radios to his flight. He said, holding 270. We didn't fly far enough east.
No.
We may as well just turn around and fly east again. Why?
Yeah. What?
By that time, the weather deteriorated even more and the sun had set. And about 6:20 that evening, the last message from Taylor's radio was recorded, and he was heard saying, all planes close up tight. We'll have to ditch unless landfall. When the first plane drops below 10 gallons, we'll all go down together.
Oh my God.
And that was the last radio transmission they got. No debris was ever found. To this day, divers search for those planes, and they have not been located 70-something years later. So here's just another layer of mystery on that story. Once the people on land heard those transmissions, they obviously launched rescue crews, and they sent out 2 of these PBM Mariner rescue planes, seaplanes.
Okay.
And as they were headed out to rescue or search for Flight 19, one of them vanished.
Oh, it's like the Mary Celeste. Those boats that all went out to find Mary Celeste and then sunk. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's very similar to that. And that was Bermuda Triangle too,
Ugh.
isn't it? They later would just investigations uncovered that the plane had somehow had a technical electrical thing and exploded and just went down. But
Just exploded.
So that plane had 15 crewmen on it.
Wow.
And so between the 14 in the training flight and the 15 on the airplane, the Navy lost 29 officers that day.
Unbelievable.
Crazy.
And then it is hard because I get that they, were following their orders and everything, but it's like once your fuel hits a certain point, I think you should just go for it. You know, like when you're like, yeah, okay, we're gonna die. Like, and you really have that strong feeling, like we should have been heading west. Like, just go.
Yeah. There's another story where the training officer had told his superior that day that he didn't want to go out,
No.
and he had a bad feeling about their training flight.
Mm-hmm.
And his superior said, sorry, that's not a good enough reason. Yeah. And then he ended up going out and just telling his guys to keep going east, which is like the weirdest thing to me. I think he had to have some sort
There's
of
something
happening in his head.
Yes.
Where he was mistaking east for west. And
yeah, I don't know what it was, but there was absolutely something like, you know, I was reading when we were going on the cruise, because like I get motion sickness, and I was like, well, should I do like Dramamine? Should I do like patches? And I was reading about the patches, and especially because we were doing kayaking and all this, and I was like, I don't know what to do. And my doctor's like, yeah, just take these patches. And I was like, so they're fine, right? Like with everything, the side effects that I knew were, no, they're all fine. And of course, you know, I have to read the package because that's me, right? And so I'm reading the packaging, and one of the things it said is like, do not take this on open water. And I went, what? And so like I read further, and it said basically because one of the side effects could be that you lose your directionality. So you won't understand like where to go if something happens. I mean, you could even just, you know, I guess it depends on how extreme it is. Now, I don't know how often that happens. And obviously I doubt somebody who flies planes has to take, you know, this kind of medication like that. But there are things that you could take or have happen that, you know, can totally alter your sense of direction. So maybe he had something, he took something, he drank something, you know, like, but there was clearly something that was confusing him, because there's no way, unless it was intentional, there's just no way that you just keep making that mistake all day, you know?
Yeah. It's hard to think anyone would. I mean, it's a pilot that seasoned, a training officer would keep making that decision. Let's go east some more. Let's go east.
It just is completely logical. I don't know.
Yeah. And I don't know. So it reminded me of the Kobe Bryant helicopter incident. And like that really affected me because, you know, I never met Kobe, but I'm a huge Lakers fan, and he perished so close to where we live.
Right.
That I did like a lot of reading up on their flight, and there's actually, I found on YouTube there's a whole simulation of their flight from when they took off to when they went down. And one of the things is like once the helicopter gets into this fog and you have no idea what up is, where down is, even though you have your compasses in front of you, it's just, it plays tricks on your head. And they were just flying regular course. They shouldn't have been flying in that fog in the first place. But at one point, the pilot just starts to turn and just keeps turning. And Kobe says, you know, you okay? Bro, you okay? And he says, yeah, I'm fine. And he just keeps turning until they hit the mountain. It's got to be just something in your head that makes direction go haywire.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like when you lose the reference points, you know, it gets hard. Yeah, it's something we don't think about because like in our lives, we always have something that tells us, you know, I need to go this way or that way, or that is that way. But like, if you're looking around and you see basically nothing. Yeah. It's like, what does that mean anymore? You know?
And especially when you're aerial, like when you're airborne.
Yeah.
When you're standing on the ground, you know which way is down.
You know.
If you're in the air, it's a whole different story.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to switch gears to a whole different story to end on a kind of a fun, classic note of a tale that a lot of people know of. And I'd heard the name before, but I never knew the story of D.B. Cooper until I Googled.
Oh, I love this.
I Googled aviation mysteries. If you know it, you can help me tell it because
I mean, it's very complex. I mean, and it's not at the same time. It's kind of a funny thing.
Well,
but it's a good
the story is very basic, but then all of the theories.
Yeah, all the theories are
spin off of it.
Yes. But let's...
And we'll just talk about the story and let everybody, if they want to deep dive on all the theories, they can do that.
Which you should. It's a great one to do. It's very
running
good story.
late. But so if you've never heard the tale, like if you're like me a week ago,
Paul, so uninformed.
The name rang a bell, but you had no idea what the story was. Thanksgiving Eve, November 24th, 1971. A man carrying a black attaché case approached the flight counter at Northwest Orient Airlines at Portland International Airport. He used cash. He got a one-way ticket on a 30-minute flight north to Seattle. On his ticket, he said his name was Dan Cooper. And first of all, that wasn't his name, but flight security is a lot different these days than it was back then. These are drawings that the FBI put out after everything went down, of course, with his sunglasses and without. He's depicted with his sunglasses because he's so damn cool. This guy's in a suit. Yep. He's got a black tie and a jacket and his attaché case. He's smoking and he gets on the plane. And side note, DB was like totally erroneous.
Yep.
When the press went to like investigate this Dan Cooper guy, somebody said it's DB, and everyone
went, they just went with it. It's amazing. It's like journalism. What? Aren't we supposed to like have fact checking? Nah, they're like, it's fine. It's cool.
Eyewitnesses described him as a white male in his mid-40s, dark hair, brown eyes, black and brown business suit with a trench coat, black raincoat, I should say, brown shoes. He had just his case and a paper bag. Like, you couldn't write this, but
this really happened.
Can't write reality. So he sits down on the plane. He orders a bourbon, lights a cigarette. So he's flying in his suit with his bourbon and his briefcase on his lap, and the flight attendant comes by and he hands her a folded note. This first flight attendant was Ms. Florence Schaffner. And she came over, he slipped her the note, and she's a pretty gal, as you can see. And she just figured it was another guy slipping her his number, as happens often. So she says thank you, and she puts it in his pocket and starts to walk away. And he clears his throat and he says, "Ma'am, you want to read that?
Hey, wait.
I have a bomb," which we know these days you shouldn't say anywhere near an airport.
Nope.
But she goes, "Oh, okay." And he says, "Can you sit down for a second?" So
Sure.
She sits down next to him, and she quietly, according to Wikipedia, asked to see the bomb. Like, that was her first instinct. Can I see it?
Yeah.
And he opens his case, and she describes like red sticks of dynamite connected by wires.
Right.
And she goes, "Ooh, yeah, that's how it looks in Looney Tune cartoons. That must be a bomb." And so he then says to her that he has some demands. He wants $200,000 in a knapsack. He wants them by 5 p.m. $20 bills only 20s. He wants 4 parachutes, 2 front parachutes and 2 back parachutes, and make sure that his cash is American cash, please. So
I wonder how much 200,000 is today. Somebody do that calculation.
From the 70s, yeah,
From
probably a
70s
lot.
today.
And all 20s.
All 20.
My math is bad. How many 20s is that?
I don't know. That would take me
10,000? 10,000 20s?
It's all, pull out a calculator.
A lot of bills.
$200,000, you said?
So she says, okay, I need to go tell the pilot. And he goes, well, I need a flight attendant sitting next to me. So she flags down her friend, Tina Mucklow. Is that her name? I'm making it up now. I know it's Mucklow. I'm making up her first name was Tina. I could be right. And so she's the nice blonde lady here, and she sits next to him, and the first flight attendant explains what's going on, and so she says, okay, all right, yeah, I'll sit here. So the first
really
flight
quick, sorry,
attendant.
that picture, what was it? I was getting like Star Trek vibes out of that picture.
Oh, totally.
Like, what's going on? Like, that could totally be a still from the show.
Yeah. And especially since Florence's name is Schaffner, it's really close to Shatner.
Oh, it's coming together now.
This is
A new
this is
conspiracy
all
theory.
written in the stars, if you could, by Star Trek. Gene Roddenberry.
Yes.
David says it would be about 1.5 million
Oh, okay.
today.
Emily
So-
says, yeah, what David said.
So Mucklow sits next to him. Florence goes to the cockpit and tells the pilots what's going on, and they're just like, "Oh my goodness!" So they get on the radio with their bosses and tell them what's going on. And at that time, I guess like the airlines were really willing to negotiate with terrorists because they were like, "Okay, we'll get that money for him." And so while he's sitting there, he's like, I also have some more demands. I'm gonna also want a flight crew to meet the plane when we land in Seattle to refuel the plane immediately. When you bring me my cash and my parachutes, and then if I get my cash, I'll let the passengers out, and then the flight crew is going to fly me to Mexico City. And so that's now the plan. But the plane has to have the airline needs some time to get all this set up. So while they're setting it up, what was supposed to be a 30-minute flight from Portland to Seattle turns into like they're 2 hours just circling the airport, and all the passengers are like, what's going on? And the flight crew doesn't want to tell anyone there's someone holding us ransom with a bomb.
Right.
So they're just making up different excuses. But that had to be kind of, irritating for people like Amanda Benjamin who don't like flights and like being in the air.
Right.
And now
I'm
my
like,
30-minute
guys.
flight is now 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, this is a problem.
So finally they say, okay, we're all ready. Go ahead and land. So they land the plane. The passengers come out. They give, they take the flight through the flight attendants. They bring this bag of cash onto the plane, and the authorities say, hey, can we come on board and just talk to you? And Cooper's like, Dan Cooper, not DB. He says, no, thanks. We're good.
No.
And so now it's the two pilots, and he asks for Mucklow to stay on the plane with him. And now he's got 4 parachutes, 2 pilots and a flight attendant. And everyone's thinking, what's going to happen? But one interesting thing to note is that he looks at these parachutes and he says, these are not the kind I need. These are actually military parachutes, and I don't want these. So they go and get him the parachutes he wants. So this shows authorities like he knows a little something about parachutes and military parachutes. That's interesting. So
I would have no clue. No,
no, you're not. You're not a plane hijacker.
I guess. I mean, I guess that's a good thing, right?
I think so. So they take off again, headed for Mexico City. The 2 pilots, the flight attendant, and Mr. Daniel Cooper. Till one of the pilots does the math and goes back. He stands next to Mr. Cooper and he says, you know what? We don't have enough fuel to get to Mexico. So we're going to have to land at some point between here and there and refuel. Where do you want us to go? And Cooper says, let me think about it and I'll let you know. And so the pilot's like, okay. So he goes back up to the cockpit. And meanwhile, he's just sitting with Mucklow. And at one point, she asks him, like, why are you doing this? Do you have a grudge against the airline? And he says, no, ma'am. I don't have a grudge against the airline, but I do have a grudge. It's an
Whoa.
iconic line now.
That
after I heard it.
is.
I'm like,
That is
"Well,
a
that's a good one."
good one.
So he decides, you know what? I think I'm just going to get out. So he tells the flight at Mucklow to let the pilots know to go ahead and open the back hatch with steps. Oh, and that's one thing. Is so this particular plane had a back end that would open up with like steps to go jump out of. It wouldn't be like you open that side door and it flies off into the engine
Right.
and takes the whole plane down. He had a knowledge of the plane to the point where it has this kind of opening back hatch that I can jump out while the plane is in the air.
Right.
So he tells the flight attendant, I'm gonna go ahead and head out. Just let the pilots know. Stay under this altitude. Stay under this speed, and then I'll be out of your guys' hair. I'll let you live. And she says to him, please just take the bomb with you when you go.
Right.
And he says, okay, great. Now by this time, it's raining. It's nighttime, and horrible out of plane jumping conditions.
Yeah, don't want to do that.
But the flight attendant goes back up to the cockpit with the pilots, closes the door. They get a sensor that the door's open and depressurized.
Okay.
And then I don't know if the door automatically closes after a certain amount of time, but then they go back and he's gone.
Okay.
All he has left behind is his clip-on bow tie. Or
yes,
not, clip-on tie.
love
not
that
a bow tie.
detail. It's clip-on.
It's a clip-on.
Oh, so good.
And the cigarette butts that might have his DNA on them.
Save those.
Flash forward, the FBI throws out the cigarette butts because DNA is not really a thing, but they keep his tie. And so these days they can pull DNA from his tie. Now I'll show you where he jumped on Google Maps if I can figure out how to technology.
Yeah.
So here is, they say he jumped out around Ariel. Here's Portland, and he flew up to Seattle, and then they took off from Seattle heading to Mexico, and he jumped out, I guess, just north of Portland. How convenient. Maybe he lives in that area.
Yeah,
or something.
maybe.
Now, if you zoom in, it's the area he was dropped out is just very desolate. This is today's map, but back in the 70s,
Yeah. There's not going
it
to be
was-
stuff there.
it was mountains, it was trees, and this was in the dead of winter. It was, not the dead of winter, but Thanksgiving time, and cold and rainy, and nobody's out there. So as soon as he's out, the pilots let everyone back at home know, and they launch a search. Nobody ever finds a parachute, a body, any evidence of D.B. Cooper, his landing. Later, they would... I'm sorry to keep doing this to you. I'm going to share my screen again.
No, you're fine. This one's not a hard change.
10 years later, there was a kid with his dad down here by the river. They were fishing, and the kid finds old $20 bills along the shoreline, and they've deteriorated a bit. And I think, did I add a picture of those? Oh yeah, because I was sharing my screen.
So that's like southwest of the landing site. It looked
Yeah.
like. Okay.
And they look a little tore up.
A little bit.
But the authorities go and they check out the serial numbers, and they had logged the serial numbers of the money that they gave to Dan Cooper, and these are some of his $20 bills. So I'm going to go back to my screen and show you where and how those 20s might have gotten there. So if he jumped out around this red dot, there are rivers that run down and connect to this other river where they found the cash. So it's very possible that when he jumped out, he lost grip because, mind you, he was wearing a trench coat, a suit.
Right.
He had a suitcase and a bag of cash as he jumped from an airplane.
Yep.
It's very possible some of the cash went.
Mm-hmm.
So the rest of the cash was never found or accounted for. There were a lot of theories speculating he went directly to Vegas and laundered it, because back then you could just walk into a casino, give them your cash for chips, go play some games,
and then cash
back out, and now you have new cash. So they like honed in on Vegas, and they found no trace of any of those serial numbers. And David makes a good point that I should mention. One of the parachutes that they gave him was not an active parachute, and he knew that. And it turned out so there was a lot of speculation of why did he ask for 4 parachutes if he knew he was going to be the only one jumping. And that's one of the things is it kind of speculative evidence that he was like some sort of parachute or paratrooper or skydiving expert, where he would peruse the parachutes he was given and pick his favorite one and use that one.
That makes sense, because you could get a dud. They could be, they could try to trick you into taking, that one. So I could see it. And I mean, you want backups anyways, right?
Absolutely. So that's, going into all of the theories and all of the suspects would be another 5-hour show within itself.
So good.
But when we're talking about aviation mysteries, and I Googled it, that was like one of the first ones that came up that I'd never heard of. So it was a fun journey for me. And I encourage anyone who hasn't heard the story. There are tons of documentaries and movies about this that I'd never seen. But I'm going to go ahead and take more deep dives in the weeks to come. But
There's
it was
so
fun to hear about. And having heard about it before yourself, what is your favorite theory about the whole thing?
Oh my God. Oh, there's so many good ones. I was just telling David, I had to text him because I had this image in my mind. I said, I watched a documentary and because we were talking about the conspiracy theorists, right? And there's something that happens when you start digging in and you get so attached to it and you can't let it go. You're like, I'm going to make this fit and I'm going to do and I was saying how I was watching this documentary and these two guys were like partners. And then finally they just split up because they had such a fundamental view. This guy's they thought they found him, right? And he was living in, I don't remember where, some tropical Florida-y kind of place, but I don't remember if it was the Bahamas or what, but some tropical place. And they were following him and they kept trying to get him. And then one guy's like, it's not him, give it up. And the other guy's like, it's him. And so they had this like I said, this fundamental break. And it's we've sunk all this money into it and it's not there. But anyways,
there are just there's so many people after this over the years claimed to be him, claimed to know him,
be married to him. I remember there's one who was on his deathbed.
Yep.
And he actually did have a little bit of evidence, but nothing solid. The most logical thing is just that they never found that parachute, but I feel like he jumped into this wooden area and probably got tangled up.
Yeah.
But it's hard because obviously I didn't find him. But if somebody else found him and that money, they would want to get rid of him
and buried the evidence.
Yep. They would want to get rid of him because they don't want to be tied to that. I could totally see something like that. I love the idea that he just walked away because he's so cool. Like you said, with a suit and his glasses. Can you imagine he just lands and he's like, all right, I'm out. Yeah. And he just changes his life and you never, so that's what I like to believe happened is he landed like James Bond
and just walked away.
And just walked away.
even though nothing should have exploded, things exploded
Oh, yeah.
as he was walking and smoking his bourbon after he landed.
Yes, that's exactly what I want to have happen. Like I said, logically, he probably got caught up in everything. But
For anyone who wants to go on a deep dive, I'm just like looking at the Wikipedia page,
yeah.
and they have all the evidence. They have all these things that the
Oh.
FBI have and could never
Yes.
figure out. But
Wasn't there something like because you've been looking at this, wasn't there something with his tie, like they found chemicals that were used in the factories where they build the airplanes? I'm pretty sure that was this one.
Let me just explain this real quick.
Oh,
and
go
I'll jump
ahead, go
back
ahead.
in. But even the Wikipedia page has this list of suspects that have been investigated by the FBI, and like it seems like everyone could be him.
Yes, it's true.
And it's wild. But you mentioned documentaries. There's just so many about like each of these different suspects. Like their family members believe it was them.
Uh-huh.
And the
Yep.
FBI says no, it wasn't.
I know.
It's crazy. But you mentioned the tie. So what I had read about the tie was that it was a very specific tie that was given to Brigham Young students,
Right.
during a certain amount of time or
Uh-huh.
certain years. And one of the suspects went to BYU during those years, and they were like, it's got to be him. It's got to be him. But then there are other things saying it wasn't.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I feel like I remember that I don't remember where they found it, but they found like you know how they have certain like proprietary chemicals that they use, you know, so they can like tie it to like this is from this place. And I'm almost sure like because I think that there was speculation that he had been an employee of the airport or of the airline. I don't remember which.
yeah.
Looking
One
at
of
that
the top
too.
suspects was actually a flight attendant for that airline who had been burned a bunch of times by that airline.
Ooh.
So he is one of the top suspects that they look at. But I will just say that from my week-long investigation, my favorite theory is that this was somebody with big goals thinking that they were invincible. And based on some of the stuff that I read from experts, like skydiving experts, the weather conditions, where he was, what he was wearing, the chances that he survived the jump out of the plane are very, very low.
It is, yeah.
They say he should have had a certain suit with a helmet, and the second he stepped out of that plane, the wind would have just ripped him every which way in his trench coat and
all
his
that cash.
suitcase and cash. Yeah,
Like it's flying.
so that's I think right now at this moment, I'm thinking he probably died somewhere so remote that they just haven't found.
Or somebody found him.
Or somebody found him. I love that.
I know. I'm
that's
liking
actually my
this. I'm
favorite.
liking this theory that somebody found him and was like, "Oh, hey, okay."
That's my favorite theory now.
Yeah,
He died on the jump. Somebody found him and took the cash.
And also like, sometimes people pass out on these jumps. You know, like people pass out when they skydive.
Sure.
You know, same thing. He could have passed out and been carried around by the wind, whipped left and right, and
I'll whip my hair back and
yes.
forth. Well, I invite you all to look into and go in
Yes,
your own
you
deep dive if
should.
you haven't yet on the mystery of DB Cooper.
Yes, let's hear it. That was a great one. All of those stories were so good.
It was fun. It was a fun night, and we'll end the night the way that we do, and it's with a duet. Now, a little word about the duet.
A little word. I haven't seen it yet, so I don't know what's happening.
You haven't, and I think you recorded it last night after you did your show.
I did.
And I recorded it later. Here's the thing. This is a beautiful beginning to what's going to be a great finished product. And I had one shot last night to record it.
Okay.
Okay. All honesty, I gave myself one shot because I think I started around 1 a.m. and I worked.
Oh my gosh. Because
So
I
it's
sent Paul it was probably 10:30, and I was like, all right, got it in there.
In the
And you're
drive.
like, I'm working on it.
So I had to tell myself I'm going to do one take and I have to walk away. Otherwise, I'm going to be up till 3 o'clock. You know how it is.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I got that one chord wrong. I got
that one thing I want to fix, just one.
So, but your performance is so beautiful, and I can't wait to go back and add more to it. I didn't do any vocals. I just
Okay, because I was like, so we did
let you
this,
carry the
you know,
phone.
separately, and we hadn't made a plan about what was happening. So I was like, you know what, here I just recorded the whole thing. It's like, you just cut me out where you're gonna come in. It's easy. There you go.
That's how we do it. So this is the first draft of what's going to be an awesome duet that I can't wait to finish and put together. Here's Amanda and I with Fly Me to the Moon.
Fly me to the moon and let me play among the stars. Let me see what spring is like on Jupiter and Mars. In other words, hold my hand. In other words, baby, kiss me. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, I love you. Fill my heart with song and let me sing forevermore. You are all I long for, all I worship and adore. In other words, please be true. In other words, in other words, in other words, I love you. Yeah, that was beautiful.
Turned out okay for being so last minute, but I think
Yes.
we could really put
Yeah,
that
I think
together
that
well.
could be really cool.
It's a good start.
I
think.
definitely was like putting out stuff yesterday. Was that just yesterday? I don't even know anymore. We were talking about it, and I was like, you know what might be cool with this?
Oh yes, yes.
And I was like, this could be fun. So
Well, originally you were like, "Let's do Come Fly with Me," and I
Yeah.
was like, "Yes, absolutely." And I sent you the track for "Fly Me to the Moon." Like somehow my brain.
you know it's so funny too, because I actually originally had thought of Fly Me to the Moon. And I was like, oh, I guess we should do like Come Fly with Me, because Fly Me to the Moon like has that little spacey feel. And I was like, I guess Come Fly with Me would be a better thematic choice. But I did like Fly Me to the Moon was my first choice. So I was like, yeah, let's do that one.
It's aviation mysteries.
It is. It's perfect.
Well, as I pull up my script here.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea.
I think every time we prep for this show, we go, well, this is going to be a short show.
We did.
So
Every time I was like, this show, this story is shorter than my last one, and my last one wasn't that long. So how did it end up longer? Maybe I had more pictures. I don't know.
no, I was talking about me. I was like, I
Oh.
have 3 short stories, and then I'm like,
Yeah, you did.
Wow.
He initially said, I don't want to jinx anything. But if you need a few extra minutes, you can take mine because it's going to be
Fine.
short.
But yeah, it's even though the Magical Mystery Hour is somehow Magical Mystery 3 hours.
Yeah.
thank
I always say,
everybody
like,
for
tell
tuning
people we shoot for an hour podcast time.
in. Right. The edited podcast will be an hour.
Yeah,
for sure.
about an hour.
About it. About an hour, I
An
shouldn't
hour.
say for sure. But while we're here on the live stream, I will have to say thank you. Emily Thatcher for the super chat. She says, amazing job storytelling and performing tonight, Paul. Thank you for sharing your stories. Super fascinating. Well done, friend. Thank you, Emily.
And I also say thank you to Emily. Thank you so much. That was the chat
And to everyone else. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Magical Mystery Hour.
Our next episode will feature more mysteries.
If you enjoyed tonight's stories and don't want to miss out on the next, please be sure to like the YouTube live stream and subscribe to the Vaudacity Network so you don't miss any future stories, as well as great music and comedy on the channel.
And if you loved it on the audio podcast, please be sure you are subscribed on that platform as well. And please leave the show a positive review and help more people who love this kind of show find our Magical Mystery Hour.
We'd like to thank producer Craig Jackman and our social media team of Dari Mills, Christina Beelan, and Heather Dingus for their promotional support.
And thank you to David Benjamin for composing and recording our theme music. And thank you again to this episode's sponsor, Emily Thatcher and Kelsey Blaine Gibson.
If you would like to sponsor a future episode of the Magical Mystery Hour, go ahead and send a Venmo of $10 to myself, Paul Carganilla. It's at the bottom of the screen here. And just make sure you put in the notes it's to sponsor an episode, and I will get in touch with you and make sure we get the message you want to put out on your sponsored episode.
Yeah, it does cost a little bit of money to get our podcast up on the interwebs and in a home where they will live, hopefully, in perpetuity. So, yeah, we really, really appreciate your support in getting this show out there. It means the world to us that you value us and what we're talking about.
You all mean the world to us, so thank you again for joining us. And until the next mystery,
good night.
night.
Bye, everybody.